difficult and not allowed visitors. So it was quite isolating and lonely, which made it even more difficult. And things ended up getting a little bit worse before they started to get better.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. First, they called him Sabir Korma. Then it was two-tier Keir, free gear Keir, never here Keir, jet set Starmer, and some even called him Starmer the Farmer Harmer. Now, after his historic visit to the White House, at last, the Prime Minister has got a nickname that he actually likes. It's Starmer the Charmer, but not everybody is charmed. On today's show, I'll talk to Chagosians and Reform's Rupert Lowe, who calls Trump's Chagos plan a total betrayal. And a thunderbolt new poll has Reform UK on course to take the most seats at the next general election. In more worrying news for Labour, 9 ministers, look at them, 9 ministers are set to lose their seats, with Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper at danger of being swept away by a turquoise tidal wave. Suella Braverman is furious that a luxury £7 million manor house in a Fareham constituency, look at it on your screens, it's a country pile, is about to be filled with asylum seekers, while the council has 1,000 locals on its own homeless list. Ahead of a protest organised locally tomorrow, I'll be joined on the show by the tough talking Tory. And Starmer the Charmer wooed Trump with a full royal visit to Britain as a grinning David Lammy looked on yesterday. Yet back in 2018, Mr Lammy said this.
We want to see the end of a president who says we should put up walls, who says that Mexicans are rapists.
Once again, are the Labour Party right royal hypocrites? That's all coming on today's show. What a beautiful start to the show. And at 4 p.m, we'll cross live to DC, Washington. This time, the world leader meeting Donald Trump is Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the golden boy of world politics, the Mother Teresa almost, the Bono of the European scene, will now go to DC to sign what looks like a deal which will gift away 50% of Ukraine's minerals to repay the multi-billion-dollar war debt. And we've got a huge exclusive coming up on the BBC, facing a police terror probe over that pro-Hamas documentary. Yes, the one that Gary Lineker backed. That's all coming in today's show. Get in touch the usual ways and go to gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines, and here's Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Our top stories. Annalise Dodds, the International Development Minister, has resigned over Sir Keir Starmer's decision to slash the international aid budget. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister revealed overseas aid would be cut by 0.2% to raise defence funding from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP. Well, in a resignation letter, Ms Dodds said, "While I disagree with the decision, I continue to support the government and its determination to deliver the change our country needs." The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, says she's disappointed to hear the news.
I'm really sorry to hear if Annalise has resigned. I've been in the convention of the North Conference, but it is a really difficult decision that was made. But it was absolutely right that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet endorse the Prime Minister's actions to spend more money on defence. And we want to see the economy grow so that we can then get back to having more money to spend on things like overseas aid and on our public services.
Counter-terrorism police are assessing whether police actions are required after the BBC admitted to paying a family with ties to Hamas when making a controversial documentary about Gaza. Well, the BBC's apologised for serious flaws in the making of the film, which features a Hamas commander's son. The broadcaster says it's got no plans to broadcast Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone again in its current form, or return it to the iPlayer. Well, the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, is set to hold an urgent meeting with the chairman of the BBC after concerns were raised over the film aired by the broadcaster. GBNews has won a judicial review of TV regulator Ofcom's decisions that two shows hosted by Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg breached the broadcasting code. In a landmark ruling, the High Court found Ofcom's conclusions that the broadcasts on the 9th of May and 13th of June in 2023 breached the code's impartiality and content regulations were unlawful. As a result, the court has quashed the decisions and awarded GB News its legal costs. The judgment is the first time the broadcasting watchdog has lost a judicial review of one of its decisions in relation to the code. Well, a spokesperson for Ofcom has said the following: "We accept the court's guidance on this important aspect of due impartiality in broadcast news and the clarity set out in its judgment. We will now review and consult on proposed changes to the broadcasting code to restrict politicians from presenting news in any type of programme to ensure this is clear for all broadcasters." Thousands of demonstrators are taking part in a general strike in Greece. They're demanding justice 2 years after a deadly train crash killed 57 people. Some live pictures here from central Athens, where Greek police have resorted to firing tear gas and stun grenades at protesters who were throwing petrol bombs themselves. The Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, has warned people against any violence ahead of the anniversary. Well, his pleas have fallen on deaf ears, because that's exactly what happened a little earlier. On February the 28th, 2 years ago, a passenger train filled with students collided with a freight train in the centre of the country. And 2 years on, an inquiry has found that those safety gaps that caused the crash have not been filled. A separate investigation remains unfinished. Nobody has been convicted for the accident. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Washington, D.C. for a crucial meeting with the US President Donald Trump. The pair are due to sign a deal which will give the US access to Ukraine's deposits of rare earth minerals in terms that have been agreed, although Zelenskyy is pushing for Ukrainian security guarantees to be added, something Trump has said should be dealt with by Europe. But the US president has also suggested the minerals deal may well pay for US support. He is suggesting closer economic ties, Donald Trump, and an agreement on mineral access between Kyiv and Washington. And he has suggested that may act as a security backstop. And patients will be able to book more appointments online and request to see their usual doctor under a new contract agreed with England's GPs. The deal provides almost £900 million worth of extra funding to general practices. Ministers hope that will mean doctors are freed up to see more patients, and it will avoid that 8 a.m. scramble for appointments. The Labour government made promises in its manifesto to bring back family doctors and end that early morning scramble. Well, Health Secretary Wes Streeting says GPs in England accepting new contract amendments is a breakthrough that's going to deliver real results for patients. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with more at 3:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Aaron. We've got a cracking 3 hours ahead. Let's get weaving. Now, Donald Trump has suggested he will approve Sir Keir Starmer's deal to hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius in a boost for Downing Street. In a very warm meeting between the two leaders in the Oval Office yesterday afternoon, the US president said leasing the American military base on the islands for 140 years was powerful and doesn't sound bad. So has the Prime Minister earned himself a new nickname, Starmer the Charmer? Well, is everybody charmed by this deal? I think I'm joining the guest now in the studio, beg your pardon, by the Chagosian leader, the Friends of the British Overseas Territories, Vanessa Kalu. Vanessa, always a pleasure to see you, and you're still smiling as ever, despite the fact a lot of people are fearing that this deal may be selling out the Chagos Islands. It may not be the end result that you wanted. Vanessa, could I ask you for your reaction to what was said yesterday in Washington?
Yes, thank you, everyone. And the Chagosian community is the priority at the moment. Their voice needs to be seen, and they need to understand their wishes. Their wishes is they don't want to give their country to Mauritius, and even the presidents say that he will need to look at the deal. He didn't say his final word. So we need to understand that we have hope. We have hope, and that the President Trump will do the best as he can to ask the UK to give the self-determination to the Chagosian, because the people who need to decide is the Chagosian people who need to decide.
And what's fascinating is the sums of money, we don't know them. It could be 8 billion, it could be 16 billion. Nigel Farage told me yesterday that if you add the numbers of the years of the lease together, it could be as high as £52 billion, because we'd be paying for this lease year on, year out. And that was when it was 99 years. Now it's 140 years. It could be £75 billion to the British taxpayer. And you were telling me that they are doing cartwheels in Mauritius because they might be receiving a great British giveaway from the British taxpayer.
Exactly. So I don't understand where the UK government will look for that money. Because at the moment in the UK, we are having a lot of issues. For example, cut to winter fuels. Yeah. We have facing high taxes, and we have trouble. People is rising poverty in the society in Britain. And we have the more important people British citizens looking safety in their own land. And it's like get denied from the UK government support and the local government support. We have people coming over to fled a criminal code and coming to the UK. I believe British citizens need to be first in UK, and that money, taxpayer need to look after British people, not to give away our island and the money as well. So I don't understand. I do understand about security. I want to know what security if we give it away to a country that compromise with the Prime Minister who, I believe on the news is saying that they have fraud. Yeah. So
now, of course, the Labour Party would say this is to rectify historical wrongs committed by the British. But every time you come on the show, Vanessa, the Chagosian voices say that you want to be a part of the United Kingdom. If there was a referendum on it, if you had a chance to vote, you would choose to remain as a part of the nation, which the Labour Party seems to think that you hate. But that's not the case, is it?
Yes, I saw on the news that the MP Lamy understand that the deportation of the Chagosian is something that really horrific. But he understands as well, after deportation, the way that Mauritius treating us as well as Chagosian, British in Mauritius, is a lot of people still in that situation suffering. So now, to rewrite the wrongdoing of the past, they need to give self-determination, to give the wishes of the Chagosian, to tell them what they want to do with the country. We want to stay BOTC, we want to stay British citizen, and is our country. I don't understand why we will need to give it to a foreign country that my parent, my ancestor, been miserable, living in despair in that country, and now we have the voice to say that we want to stay BOTC, British Overseas Territory. If the UK government, Keir Starmer, is giving away our country and overseas territory, I believe all the 14 overseas territory is in danger, because not giving one overseas territory, we have 14 of British overseas territory. They are in danger. So no, we stay British and we keep our British overseas territory citizen and British citizen. They need to look after Chagosian in general, because Chagosian is struggling, not even as British citizen. Chagosian and British citizen in UK need to look after with the government, UK government. This is what they need to do. Give support to all the British citizens who fled a criminal code because they are voicing their right, and that is not right for me.
Vanessa, you should get involved in politics, darling. Now, you are amazing. You nail it. You get it down. You've given eloquence to your community so well throughout this entire thing, and this is still going on. Thank you very, very much for coming in today here on GB News. And what's that you got there?
Thank you. I have a present for you. This is I'm so proud of my flag, and my flag is really well designed. And I have a present for you, and then to say thank you for everything you do, and then to open every British citizen, British people, their eyes what's happening about.
As a Chagosian T-shirt, I should wear that with pride. If you've got them in kid size, my kid would take one too. Hey, I'm being greedy now. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming in today. Absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. So passionate, so well spoken. Now then, let's bring in the former Labour spokesman, James Mathewson. James, welcome to the show. It did come as a huge surprise yesterday. There was a big intake of breath when Sir Donald Trump, beg your pardon, seemed to nod along and agree with Sir Keir Starmer. What's your take?
I'm still cringing a bit, Martin. I mean, it's great, right? It's great. It's what people need. It's what needs to happen. You couldn't hope for a better outcome. And the Telegraph were even saying that, you know, Downing Street aides were popping cans of beer on the flight, getting ready for the flight back. And they're all kind of in a party mood because it's a fantastic outcome. And it's even better than I think they hoped for because it's so unprecedented with Donald Trump. You never know what's going to happen. And of course, the war of words that's been there previously, the disgraceful comments from Elon Musk about Keir Starmer. So you never knew which way it was going to go. So it's great that it worked out the way that it did. But I mean, that bit with the letter reading, I mean, I wonder if Trump's put it on his fridge because it felt a bit like a parent congratulating a child, to be honest.
It's funny, James, because like, a lot of people on the political right thought that was a really shrewd and a very politically astute thing to do when he got the letter out. But I guess people on the political left think, oh, my God, he's toadying up to the orange man, the person we've been portraying as the Antichrist for years.
Yeah, there'll be discomfort on the left. And I think a little bit of discomfort on the right. I think people, you know, nobody likes to see such outward sycophantism. And I think we saw the same with Macron as well, you know, the kind of over-the-top laughter at his jokes, all of that stuff. But this is the Donald Trump world. This is what we have to deal with, right? Because that's what he's like. And I think somebody described it as shameless. But what do you do with somebody who knows no shame, you know? There's no other way.
So, James, something else that might get a few sort of furballs coming up the throats of those on the political left is rolling out the royal carpet, because, of course, there are quite a few on the political left who are Republicans who would like to see the monarchy done away with, because, of course, Sir Keir Starmer used his trip to the White House to present Donald Trump with that invitation to meet the King. But, look, let's have a little bit of fun here, James. Bear with me. And, look, how did Labour MPs react a few years ago to the pretence of Trump coming over to Britain? And then, well, Foreign Secretary David Lammy might be shaking hands with the president now, but he had this to say 7 years ago.
We want to see the end of a president who says we should put up walls, who says that Mexicans are rapists, who wants to roll back civil rights. Trump should not be meeting our great monarch. He should not be meeting the Queen. He doesn't deserve it. The offer of this trip was premature in the first place. It's a huge embarrassment to us.
There you go. David Lammy seems to have changed his tune, and somebody else who's changed their tune as well is the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, who said this in 2020.
Trump is killing, you know, thousands of Americans by giving them duff advice, and his macho, I'm all right, you know, look at me, I've survived COVID. He's an absolute buffoon. He has no place in the White House. He's an embarrassment, and he should be ashamed of himself.
And meanwhile, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, signed a petition in 2019 to block Trump's state visits, and he tweeted this: Trump is such an odious, sad little man. Imagine being proud to have that as your president. Well, now he is the president, and he's been invited to Britain by your mob. And the Energy Security and Net Zero Minister Ed Miliband was equally as complimentary back in 2016.
Was delusional fantasy, I must say. The idea that we have shared values with a racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper beggars belief.
So, James Mathewson, let's bring you back in now. Let's face it, the Labour Party are a bunch of right royal hypocrites.
Well, I think it's understandable that you show those clips. I don't think their views have changed, by the way. I don't think any of those people's views have changed. My view on Donald Trump hasn't changed at all. I think he's a sexual predator. I think he's a deviant. I think he's a dangerous individual.
Be careful, he's got big lawyers and deep pockets.
Yeah, when you're in a job, as you know, Martin, you have to do the job, okay? And that's what they're doing here. It's what Keir Starmer's doing. We all have aspects of our job that we don't like. We all taught from day one, right? A good employer tells you that you need to work with people that you disagree with and that you don't like when you're in a job. It's part of my job, Martin. Look at us. We're having a conversation now, you know. We get along. We make it work, you know. When I come on GBNews, I don't love it a lot of the time. I like working with you than I do some of the other presenters, but, you know, we put those differences aside. We try and, you know, tell a story. And that's the whole point here. I think they're trying to put their differences aside to do the job they've been elected to do. But I don't think their views have changed. And I think Trump will know that. I think it's important that he knows that.
OK, James Mathewson, flattery will get you everywhere. Thank you very, very much for joining me today on GB News. Now then, the man of the moment, the chopper has landed. GB News political editor Chris Hope has come back from Washington, D.C. And Chris, what a whirlwind tour. And you became something of a star there yourself. Donald Trump said you had a very nice face.
Yeah, Martin, hi. Well, I'm at home now. I got in the early hours of this morning. Yeah, a 36-hour whirlwind trip. I was watching those clips back. David Lammy, of course, was in the Oval Office, literally in front of me, looking at Donald Trump as he opened the invitation from the King for that visit. He looks like he's going to visit twice in the next 2 years. Once, probably, I reckon, this year to Balmoral to plan a state visit, an unprecedented one. Next year. I think it was a successful trip, notwithstanding the resignation of the aid minister today over the cutting of the aid budget to pay for defence. But look at the wins he got there. His policy on Chagos Islands, you may not like it, viewers don't like it, all that kind of thing. But I think there's no question that is a big win for him. You've got the other areas too, in terms of they're looking at trying to get land back for the Russian-controlled Ukraine. That's a big win. Even this trade deal, that's fantastic too. So I think there's ways this might work. I think, and it's if you compare that with the Macron visit on Monday, when he came away with very little at all, almost a kind of a bromance, a forced bromance, I think, between Trump and Macron. It went very well. But I was sitting there in the Oval Office, 10 feet away, asking him this question about what do you have in common with Sir Keir Starmer, given your different political backgrounds, and he looked to me and said, you got a nice face. He's got a nice face. And Starmer said, yeah, I've known him for quite a while. You know, get ready. He'll ask me a killer question. So I asked him, well, it wasn't that killer, but I certainly asked him a quite tricky question. But no, I think in person, when you were in the room with him, Martin, he's quite a compelling figure. He makes little jokes. If you think back to what Nigel Farage, our colleague, said the other day, he said he says things and doesn't always mean them. So when he says, for example, that Zelenskyy is a dictator, he disavowed that remark in the Oval Office yesterday. He thinks, no, he's not a dictator. To me, he's a businessman in a politician's suit. He says things, but doesn't mean them. Look at the deals he does. Look at the way he's basically stopped almost all border crossings. And there he is on screen now. Almost all border crossings have been stopped going to the northern and southern border in America, down 93% from the high under Joe Biden in December 2023. And that's because he threatened tariffs on Mexico and Canada. He uses all the levers he's got to get a result that he needs. And that's why I think politicians here don't understand that. But I wonder whether that man there, Sir Keir Starmer, might now just get that. He kind of understands what's happened here. He understands he's a deal maker. And, you know, in terms, Donald Trump said that he tried to do a good deal with me over lunch. He's worth the salary he's getting as Prime Minister.
Yeah, it was an astonishing trip. It really was a moment in history. Chris, Hope, you were there, and I'm glad you made it back. At one point, I thought you were going to get a room with the president. You were so enamoured with him. Chris Hope, fantastic trip. That will forever be under your business card. You've got a nice face. Chris Hope, fantastic as ever. Thanks for coming back to Britain. Beautiful. Now, coming up, the BBC could face a terror probe after admitting the family of a senior Hamas official was paid for making that controversial pro-Hamas Gaza documentary, the one that Gary Lineker supported. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
We're proud proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News, 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:27 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, counter-terrorism police are assessing whether police action is required after the BBC admitted to paying a family with ties to Hamas when making that controversial documentary about Gaza. It's an astonishing story. Let's get brought fully up to speed now with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, this is an incredible development. Tell us more.
Well, it's a real old mess for the BBC, and it's only getting messier, it seems, as the Metropolitan Police may launch an investigation into the possibility that funds were sent to a terrorist organisation, that, of course, terrorist organisation being Hamas. Now, this all centres on that documentary that was made by a production company for the BBC, Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone, which featured as the narrator a 14-year-old boy called Abdullah. It later turned out, of course, that that 14-year-old boy is the son of a senior Hamas minister. And now we've just had in the last day or so the confirmation that this production company paid a sum of money to a bank account of the sister of the mother of this 14-year-old boy. I hope you're following. So that is effectively money that's gone to the family of this senior Hamas minister. Now, whether that constitutes actually going into Hamas coffers or not, we don't know. And it's such a messy old situation over there. It would be difficult probably to trace exactly where that money is going. And the possibility, of course, is always that there may be other payments that were made by this production company to other elements of the Hamas government. That is actively being looked at now by the BBC as a matter of urgency. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, is also about to meet with the BBC chairman to discuss what the BBC admits themselves are serious errors. Now, we've had a statement from the Metropolitan Police this afternoon, and they've said, we're aware of a BBC documentary about Gaza and we've received a number of reports raising concerns. It goes on to say officers from the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command are currently assessing whether any police action is required in relation to this matter. Now, people might be wondering why on earth the Metropolitan Police would be potentially investigating here, Martin. The reason is simple. Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation in the UK. Sending them money would be a criminal offence. I've covered multiple court cases over the years with people who have been convicted and jailed for sending money to ISIS and other proscribed terrorist organisations.
A right-old pickle for the BBC. Yet earlier on today, Mark White, a victory for GB News. Tell us more.
Yes, this relates to an Ofcom ruling about two broadcasts that were made by GB News back in 2023. The first, that was on the 9th of May 2023, was on the Jacob Rees-Mogg programme State of the Nation, in which Jacob broke away from his scheduled programming to read out a breaking news story relating to Donald Trump and the civil action against him in the United States. It was about a 50-second pre-prepared, pre-written clip that Jacob Rees-Mogg read out. The second incident related again to Jacob's show, and this was the 13th of June, the day after the Nottingham attacks. When I was actually in Nottingham, Jacob crossed to me in Nottingham to get the latest developments on a breaking story relating to the stabbings there in Nottingham. That was about 3.5 minutes long. Now, Ofcom, in ruling on due impartiality, didn't try to suggest that the content of what Jacob was reporting on his show was in any way partial, but by virtue of the fact of his status as a politician, and remember he was an MP at the time in 2023, then de facto, because of his status as an MP, that was duly impartial as far as they were concerned and broke those rules. GB News challenged that, and today that decision, that judicial review judgment, was handed down, and it was handed down in favour of GB News. Ofcom have said that they are not going to appeal that decision and will look to their procedures and their sort of code of conduct with regard to what politicians can and can't say in terms of breaking news.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Mark White. And let's go through that spokesperson for Ofcom now. They say this: we accept the court's guidance on this important aspect of due impartiality in broadcast news and the clarity set out in its judgment. We will now review and consult on proposed changes to the broadcasting code to restrict politicians from presenting news in any type of programme to ensure this is clear for all broadcasters. Now, lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including GB News has been speaking to Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham about Donald Trump. But first is your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good afternoon to our top stories. The Minister for Overseas Development, Annalise Dodds, has resigned over the Prime Minister's decision to slash the foreign aid budget. The money is going to be used to fund defence spending instead, after Sir Keir Starmer announced plans to raise Britain's budget from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP. He did that ahead of yesterday's meeting with Donald Trump. In a resignation letter, Ms Dodds says the cuts will remove food and healthcare from desperate people, deeply harming the UK's reputation. Well, as you've just been hearing, GB News has won its judicial review of TV regulator Ofcom's decisions that 2 shows hosted by Jacob Rees-Mogg breached the broadcasting code. In a landmark ruling, the High Court found Ofcom's conclusions that the broadcasts on the 9th of May and the 13th of June 2023 breached the code's due impartiality and content regulations were unlawful. As a result, the court squashed the decisions and has awarded GB News its legal costs. It is the first time the broadcasting watchdog has lost a judicial review in one of its decisions in relation to the broadcasting code. Well, a spokesperson for Ofcom has said the following: we accept the court's guidance on this important aspect of due impartiality in broadcast news and the clarity set out in its judgment. We will now review and consult on proposed changes to the broadcasting code to restrict politicians from presenting news in any type of programme to ensure this is clear for all broadcasters. Ofcom is not going to appeal the decision. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy is to hold an urgent meeting with the chairman of the BBC after concerns were raised over a documentary aired by the broadcaster. The BBC's apologised for serious flaws in the making of Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone. Counter-terror police are now looking into whether the law has been broken through the payment to a Hamas official's son. The broadcaster says it has no plans to broadcast the film again in its current form or return it to the iPlayer. Greek police have fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators throwing petrol bombs as mass protests to mark the second anniversary of the country's worst rail disaster have been marred by violence. Dozens of hooded protesters have clashed with security forces in central Athens as they attempted to storm the barricades near Parliament buildings. Hundreds of thousands of people have been taking part in demonstrations across Greece. They are demanding justice for the crash that left 57 people dead and dozens more injured. Well, an inquiry concluded on Thursday that the collision of a passenger plane filled with students and a freight train was caused by human error, poor maintenance and inadequate staffing, and it found the safety gaps that caused the crash have not yet been filled. And the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Washington. He'll have a crucial meeting with President Trump shortly. We think in about 25 minutes' time. The 2 leaders are expected to sign a deal that will give the US access to Ukraine's mineral resources, and they'll also discuss how to end the war with Russia. Now, Zelenskyy, the 3rd European leader to visit the White House this week after Sir Keir Starmer and the French President Emmanuel Macron. They both tried to persuade Trump to grant European security in any deal that is made to end the war with Russia. Those are your latest headlines. I'll be back with more just after 4:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Lancashire, the M6 is blocked in both directions after a collision between junction 34 at Lancaster and 35 for Carnforth. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound remains closed. That's been shut since last night after a collision. Closed from junction 16 for Crewe along to junction 15 for Stoke-on-Trent. In Northamptonshire, the M1 southbound is partly blocked after a collision between Northampton at junction 15 and Milton Keynes at junction 14. And in Somerset, long delays on the M5 northbound after a car overturned, and that's happened just by junction 21, the turn-off for Western and the A370.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I know. So, Chef Theo Michaels joins us in the studio to talk about this. We know we've got a problem with food waste in this country, Theo, but this idea that there's a younger generation who are just reading the back of a packet and going, well, that must have gone off then, throwing it in the bin. Why do they do that when maybe we wouldn't?
Do you know what? I think we live in an increasingly sanitised
bubble-wrapped world, right, where we've become detached from our food, we've become detached from using a bit of common sense. And so I think there's a generation that are doing exactly this. They're looking at a best before date to start with, which actually is meaningless. Best before date is me turning around to you two going, the fish should be at its prime on Tuesday, right? Yeah. But that's not the use by date. The use by date could be a week later. You know, we say the sniff test. That's what we should be doing. So I've had it before. I had a great experience once. I walked into a supermarket and I saw an Italian guy I know, and he was jumping around with so much excitement as he was collecting handfuls of Parmesan cheese that they said, oh, it was going out of date. And he was laughing, so he was going, we aged this stuff for years. Yes. It doesn't go out of date. Yeah. So he was buying it by the truckload. And I think the key thing is there is this sort of sniff test that people talk about, but it's absolutely right. It's ingrained in us. It's instinctive that if we smell something that's off, it's like giving someone a dose of salts.
I'm also wondering, with these dates on these packaging, did it actually do a favour to the supermarkets because it meant that you're throwing them away and buying less?
100%.
Buying more.
The use-by dates only came out in the 70s, right? And that was done by one particular supermarket. And for me, I can't help be cynical about it, Bevan.
Who was it?
Marks and Spencer's.
Was it?
Marks and Spencer's in the 70s.
And they all followed suit.
And yeah.
They all followed suit.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, moments ago, GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster spoke to the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, about everything from Donald Trump to the north of England. Take a look.
We are here to talk about the north, of course, in Preston at the Convention of the North. But, of course, Donald Trump overshadows everything. How do you think the Prime Minister got on yesterday? And are you disappointed that Annalise Dodds has chosen to resign over the cuts to overseas days?
I thought the Prime Minister showed tremendous leadership yesterday and served the national interest in a really meaningful way, because these are really decisive moments, aren't they? If you're in Ukraine and you were watching that from there, what the Prime Minister did obviously helped us in the UK and the beneficial comments the President made about trade. But if you're sitting there and you saw how that issue has changed over the course of a week, that is real leadership. That is real statesmanship, and it needs to be recognised wherever people are on the political spectrum. That is what Keir Starmer provided yesterday.
A lot of people feel that they've been let down by successive governments. Labour's poll ratings are not good at the moment. Are you worried that something similar to what's happening in America could be coming here, and how do you guard against that?
I think politics is changing. I certainly know. I've almost been a elected politician for 25 years, and I can't even relate to how it was when I first started to how it is now. It has changed a huge amount. Social media has driven that change. It is more polarised. It is more difficult. I think the general election ahead of us will be different for those reasons, and I think the same loyalties are there in the same way anymore. So we've got to respond to that, and we are responding to that. We're here at the Convention of the North, and there's a really significant thing that we've all been able to announce today. By May next year, 100% of the north of England will have a devolution deal, and that means we can do politics differently in the north of England going forward. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, I have always taken a place first rather than a party first approach, and what that means is I've always been prepared to stand up to my own side or the last government if they don't do the right thing by Greater Manchester and the north of England. And I think that's the style of politics people want to see a little bit more of. So yes, politics has changed, or the kind of political mood has changed, but finally we've got the ways to do politics differently rather always going through the old ways of Westminster and the alienation that causes people to feel.
Northerners were promised Northern Powerhouse. They were promised fast rail from Hull to Liverpool. They were promised HS2 to Leeds and Manchester. None of those things have happened. They were promised levelling up. Can they have faith that it's going to be different this time?
Well, that's kind of what I was just talking about. Those kind of Westminster sort of sound bites that then don't turn into anything, and that creates a problem here in the north. we've had this, haven't we, time after time, and people kind of look at the transport infrastructure in London and the South East. They look at it here and they think, are we second-class citizens or what? When are we going to get equal treatment? And then one of the messages I've delivered here today is this one. It's only going to be justifiable in going forward to have airport expansion in London and the South East and a big focus on Oxford and Cambridge if that is balanced by a new deal for the north of England, when we do get that big infrastructure that we need, where we do get new industry and the new homes that we need. And that's one of the messages that I'm saying. Going back to that old model of just saying, oh, well, we'll only invest in London and the South East because that's where the growth is. That's not true anymore. Greater Manchester is the fastest growing city region in the country, and it has been for a decade and is predicted to continue to grow.
Andy Burnham, now, is he a future Labour leader in waiting? Certainly acting like one there. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Unsettled across many parts of the Mediterranean, some heavy rain, also some thunderstorms, particularly affecting parts of Spain. Some heavy showers for Madeira and parts of Tenerife, and some heavy and prolonged spells of potentially thundery rain, particularly across southeastern parts of Spain. Some heavy showers affecting Nice and also Rome, parts of the Adriatic coastline, but largely settled across Greece. And it is largely an improving picture as we head into next week, with the best of the temperatures once again across Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head towards the weekend, we can expect some frost and also some fog to start in the morning. A little bit damp at times across the northwest. Otherwise, there's going to be lots of dry and settled weather. It's all thanks to this area of high pressure across the country, bringing us some fine and settled conditions. That's away from the northwest, though, where we'll eventually see some clouds spilling in. Also some outbreaks of rain by the time we reach the morning, and winds starting to strengthen here too, particularly across the far northwest of Scotland. But elsewhere, plenty of clear skies, but that means temperatures are likely to dip below freezing. So a chilly start once again to the weekend, likely to see quite a widespread frost across central and southern parts, and possibly even some fog, maybe even some freezing fog to start the day. It's a different story across parts of the north and northwest, though much cloudier here. Some outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle, eventually clearing from the far northwest of Scotland. Still quite blustery here though, and a few showers moving through. So quite a cloudy and damp start across Northern Ireland, perhaps a quite a hazy start across northern parts of England, but elsewhere plenty of bright skies, but once again a cold start, frost in places, and perhaps a little bit murky where we see some fog, but that should clear quite nicely through the morning. Once again, allowing another fine and settled day ahead across many central and southern parts of the UK, perhaps turning a little bit hazier into the afternoon as we see a build of high cloud, and a little bit cloudy across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, perhaps a slight touch of light rain and drizzle, but brighter across Scotland later with some showers skirting the far north, and fairly similar temperatures too, round about where they should be for the time of year, highs of 10 to 11 Celsius. Then through into the evening, we'll continue to see this band of cloud, outbreaks of rain slowly skirt their way southeastward. So that might just stop widespread frost developing. And into next week, once again, widespread high pressure. So lots of fine and dry settled conditions to come.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:48 on this glorious Friday afternoon with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the government is considering a huge shake-up of the British prison sentencing services, and this will be the biggest change in more than 30 years, and it means that prisoners will have to earn their freedom instead of being automatically granted it and released from jail early after serving a mere 40% of their sentences. Now, is this a good idea from the government? Is it the right way to go in Britain? Well, let's speak now with a social campaigner and, of course, the former prison inmate, Winston Davis. Winston, as you know, I'm a huge fan of you and how you turn your life around. When you went inside, you'd learnt a trade, you got your head down, you've come out, you made a huge success of your life. I wanted to get you on the show today because I thought that this scheme would really catch your eye. Now, Shabana Mahmood is the Justice Secretary, has been keeping an eye on what they do in Texas. And in Texas, if you work, if you train, if you study inside and if you show good behaviour, then incrementally your prison sentence comes down. I think this is a great idea. What say you?
First of all, thank you for having me on, Martin. This story is really relevant to me today because it's actually 17 years to the day that I went to prison. And, you know, well, congratulations on getting there and congratulations on getting out.
I'm going to turn your life around, mate.
Well, this is the thing, right? I think it's a great idea that they're putting positive incentives for people to work hard and to get themselves out of prison early. However, I wonder whether the British public is even ready for, you know, people that have been convicted from whatever crime it is to be released, you know, as early as 25% of their sentence. So at the moment, people are up in arms. Oh, they're doing 40%. You know, we should be locking up people for longer. I wonder whether the society, as a British public, whether we're ready to people to be let out early if they're behaving themselves and earning these credits.
Well, I think we might be when you look at the results, Winston, because everything is about results. People, I think, are cynical, and perhaps rightly so if people are perceived to have soft treatment inside. No, it really kind of boils their blood when they hear about things like PlayStations, special treatment, you know, a soft life inside. But this is about getting your head down and earning the right to early release. And Winston, particularly look at the facts. The reoffending rate in Texas is the lowest in all of America. A mere 16.9% of people reoffend in Texas compared to 68% across the whole of the United States of America. The crime levels in Texas are as low now as in the late 1960s because, Winston, if you give these cons a purpose, if you give them some hope, if they learn skills and you treat them with humanity and then that gets them gainful employment on the outside, you're living proof, my old son, that you can turn your life around and get on with it and make a fist of it outside so you don't go back in clink.
100%, Martin. Like you said, I learned to become a heating engineer, learnt my trade, and I've built a successful life out of it. The real focus here, like you said, is about rehabilitation, about how you treat these people. I know people have this thing about, you know, giving people a soft touch. I'm not saying give people a sort of, you know, an easy ride, but talk about humanity. They're still human beings. And I said to you, I do draw the line on paedophiles, rapists, you know, premeditated. I draw a line on that. But the average prison sentence in this country is 22 months, not 22 years. So those people, give them half a chance. Let them work. Let them earn their right. They'll surprise a lot of people. You know, and if you look at this one in Texas, it's actually very similar to the approach in Norway. The focus is on rehabilitation. The focus is on giving people the tools to come out and get a career and have a go at turning their life around. If they screw up, you know, it is what it is, they go back. But the fact is here, it costs us £18 billion a year on reoffending in this country. You know, our rate is somewhere near 70% will reoffend within 3 years. In Texas, they've got that down to 16%. In Norway, it's around 20%. So you just look at the countries that are doing it well, and like this minister's gone over there to see what they're doing, model countries where they're actually having success in it. But again, I'll just go back to the start of the conversation is, I just don't know whether people are actually ready for that. People just want to see punishment. They want to see people feeling pain, which is part of going to prison. Going to prison is the punishment. Going there should be protecting the public, should be reducing crime. But the fourth reason of prison is to rehabilitate people. And that's got to be at the focus of everything that we do as part of the process of putting people in prison.
You know, Winston, I think a lot of people will be nodding along with you when we say, you know, this isn't for everybody. This isn't for serious criminals. We do need a sense of punishment inside. We've got a quick 30 seconds here, Winston. 17 years ago today, you were sent down. How did that make you feel, and how proud are you now that you've turned your life around?
Obviously, it was a shocking day. It wasn't that shocking. I saw it coming, but actually, that was the biggest wake-up call that I needed. Going to prison was a slap in the face. It was like, okay, really smell it, really feel it, and go, what am I going to do with my life from here? And every single day, I said, what am I here for? And I said, I'm going to learn. I'm going to turn my life around. I'm going to prove to the world that I'm more than what I am today.
OK, Winston Davies, we have to leave it there. Once again, well done, Wilson. Pleasure to see you. Let's go for that beer some time. Now, in a few moments' time, we'll cross the line to the White House. This time, it's Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, who's meeting Donald Trump. Live pictures there. Come back soon for the full press conference. Next time.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head towards the weekend, we can expect some frost and also some fog to start in the morning. A little bit damp at times across the northwest. Otherwise, there's going to be lots of dry and settled weather. It's all thanks to this area of high pressure across the country, bringing us some fine and settled conditions. That's away from the northwest, though, where we'll eventually see some clouds spilling in. Also some outbreaks of rain by the time we reach the morning. And winds starting to strengthen here too, particularly across the far northwest of Scotland. But elsewhere, plenty of clear skies, but that means temperatures are likely to dip below freezing. So a chilly start once again to the weekend, likely to see quite a widespread frost across central and southern parts, and possibly even some fog, maybe even some freezing fog to start the day. It's a different story across parts of the north and northwest, though much cloudier here. Some outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle, eventually clearing from the far northwest of Scotland. Still quite blustery here, though, and a few showers moving through. So quite a cloudy and damp start across Northern Ireland. Perhaps a quite a hazy start across northern parts of England. But elsewhere, plenty of bright skies, but once again, a cold start, frost in places, and perhaps a little bit murky where we see some fog. But that should clear quite nicely through the morning. Once again, allowing another fine and settled day ahead across many central and southern parts of the UK, perhaps turning a little bit hazier into the afternoon as we see a build of high cloud, and a little bit cloudy across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, perhaps a slight touch of light rain and drizzle, but brighter across Scotland later with some showers skirting the far north, and fairly similar temperatures too, round about where they should be for the time of year, highs of 10 to 11 Celsius. Then through into the evening, we'll continue to see this band of cloud. Outbreaks of rain slowly skirt their way southeastward, so that might just stop widespread frost developing. And into next week, once again, widespread high pressure, so lots of fine and dry settled conditions to come.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Cumbria, the M6 is shut southbound after a collision, closed from junction 36 for Kirkby Lonsdale along to junction 34 at Lancaster. In Staffordshire, there are long delays on the M6 southbound. There are 2 lanes shut there after a collision between junction 16 for Crewe and 15 for Stoke-on-Trent. In Hertfordshire, long queues on the M25 clockwise after a collision just after junction 17 for Maple Cross, with queues back to junction 15 for the M4. And in Berkshire on the M4, delays in the roadworks between junction 10 for Wokingham and Bracknell and junction 12 for Thiel and the A4 turnoff.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus us to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you, and a happy Friday. It's 4 p.m. on this glorious Friday afternoon. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Donald Trump will soon, well, in fact, imminently, you can see live pictures on your screen there of the White House. He'll be welcoming this time the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the White House for talks on the Ukraine war, about the minerals deal, and what will the future mean with the United States and Ukraine in that country. We'll bring that full moment live as it happens. And first, they called him Sabir Korma. Then it was two-tier Keir, free-gear Keir, never here Keir, jet-set Starmer. And some even called him Starmer the Farmer Harmer. Well, now, after his historic visit to the White House yesterday, at last, the Prime Minister's got a nickname he actually likes. It's Starmer the Charmer. But not everybody was charmed by his performance yesterday. On today's show, I'll speak to Rupert Lowe from the Reform Party, who called Trump's Chagos deal a total surrender. And a Thunderbolts new poll has Reform UK on course to take the most seats at the next general election. And even more worrying news for Labour. Look on your screens there. 9 ministers are set to lose their seats, with Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper in danger of being swept aside by a turquoise tidal wave. Suella Braverman is furious that a luxury £7 million manor house in her Fareham constituency, as you can see on your screen now, look at the size of that stack. It's about to be filled with asylum seekers. And while the council has more than 1,000 locals on its own homeless list. Well, ahead of a protest at 11 a.m. tomorrow, I'll be joined by the tough-talking Tory who's crying, enough is enough. And Starmer the Charmer wooed Donald Trump with a full royal visit to Britain as a grinning David Lammy looked on yesterday in the Oval Office. Yet back in 2018, Mr. Lammy said this.
We want to see the end of a president who says we should put up walls, who says that Mexicans are rapists.
Once again, the question of the day is this. Are the Labour Party right royal hypocrites? So no. Welcome to the show. As just discussed at the top of the hour there, any moments now we're expecting Donald Trump to welcome Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the White House for talks on the Ukraine war and that minerals deal with the US. You can see there the full flags of Ukraine are out. The US military, as we saw, directly replicating yesterday's awaiting of the arrival of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. Any minute now, Zelenskyy is expected to enter the White House. And, of course, we'll bring you the full pictures of that historic moment. Could this be the moment where 50% of Ukraine's future mineral wealth is signed away to the United States to pay for the multi-billion war debt? Don't forget, until recently, the United Kingdom was still paying America off for its war debt in World War II. a defining moment in US-European history. We're bringing that fully as it happens throughout the rest of the show. We're expecting the imminent arrival shortly. So ahead of that now, we're waiting to get Suella Braverman on the line. But first, let's bring in the political commentator, Jonathan Liss. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Let me ask you about your take on the performance of the Prime Minister yesterday, and in particular that dramatic moment where he whipped out the royal invite from King Charles over. It went down pretty well, I've got to say, with people from the political right. But a few on the political left seem a bit repelled that Starmer was toadying up to a man that most of the party clearly despise. What's your take?
Well, a bit of option A and B, really, Martin. Obviously, as someone on the left, I despise Trump and everything he stands for. I wish dearly that he wasn't president. But I'm also a pragmatist. I also want my country to do well, unlike, I have to say, some people on your side of the political spectrum who seem to be egging on Trump to humiliate Starmer and seemed crushed and devastated when Starmer emerged triumphant from that meeting. That's not my idea of patriotism, but we'll leave that to one side. I want Britain to do well.
What do you mean there? I'm assuming you're talking about the Chagos deal, which, by the way, hasn't been signed and sealed yet. Are you talking about the Chagos deal?
No, I'm talking about the general vibes. I'm talking about a lot of people on the political right who hate Starmer, which is obviously their prerogative, but who hate him so much, they were calling quite openly for Trump to humiliate him, for Trump to sort of send him packing, for Starmer to sort of come back completely defeated. And that's not my idea of patriotism. I think that, I always support Britain's national interest. And it's clearly in Britain's national interest that the Prime Minister should have a good working relationship with the President of the United States, whoever that is. I wish it wasn't Donald Trump, but it is Donald Trump. So we have to work with Donald Trump. And that means, I hate to say it, but it does mean bending to and adapting oneself to Trump's whims. And one of Trump's whims is he likes to be flattered. So, even though I am repelled by the idea of a second state visit, I was repelled by the idea of the first one. It was a clever move by Starmer to do that because he knows how to get to Trump where he wants him, which is by flattery. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris said in the debate, by the way, that world leaders just love the fact they know how to get Trump because they know flattery and favour. That's what Starmer has done. So much the better if it means that Britain can get some of what Britain wants.
OK, we've got some live pictures on the screen there now. Look, you can see they're just neatening up those resplendent flags of the United States and Ukraine, either side of that historic entrance to the White House. Volodymyr Zelenskyy is due imminently. Donald Trump will be waiting just inside that door to step out and greet the Ukrainian president. Waiting on those pictures to come in, Jonathan, ahead of that. What's your takeaway about the situation in Ukraine? Because quite clearly, Sir Keir Starmer went there playing tough ball yesterday, was talking about peacekeeping, and Donald Trump said peacekeeping is the easy bit. The tough bit is getting the deal. Sir Keir Starmer seemed to imply there'd be a joint venture to keep Russia at bay, and Donald Trump almost slapped him down, saying, could you beat Russia on your own? At which point Sir Keir Starmer awkwardly laughed. The fact of the matter is, you're absolutely right. Europe, the United Kingdom, the entire world relies upon Donald Trump, whether you hate him or not.
Well, yes and no. Ukraine has been very insistent that it could carry on fighting without the United States, but it doesn't want to. Clearly, the United States... 5 minutes? For how long? How could Ukraine fight on without endless billions of dollars of armaments and support from the USA? Martin, I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm saying the majority of the aid actually has come from Europe. It's a common misconception that everything has come from the United States. That's not the case. Look, it'll be very, very hard. Clearly, Ukraine wants and needs the US support, but it's not just going to roll over, is the point I make. It's not just going to surrender if Donald Trump tells Zelenskyy to surrender and just give Putin everything he wants. That's not going to happen. First and foremost, it wouldn't be acceptable in any way to the Ukrainian people, to whom Zelenskyy is ultimately accountable. So that's the first thing. Now, we obviously will wait and see what happens when Zelenskyy meets Trump now, about what the contents, the fine details of this deal that they're supposedly hammering out. And obviously, if it leads to a stable peace in Ukraine that the Ukrainian people can accept, then who am I to sort of gainsay it? But that is a very, very difficult ask.
Jonathan,
I was reassured.
Can I ask you, Jonathan, if Donald Trump says. He said yesterday, I'm sick of paying endless billions to this war. I'm sick of paying endless billions to NATO. I want my money back. That's what this mineral deal is going to be about. Just say Donald Trump decides to pull the plug entirely on supporting Ukraine. Just say he pulls the $900 billion or a good chunk of it that he puts into NATO, and just say that the 2.5% Keir Starmer went to America with isn't enough. Just say we have to put endless more billions into our own defence. Do you support putting more money into places like Ukraine when, for example, pensioners have lost their winter fuel allowance and farmers are having their land raided?
Well, I mean, I've always said that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not either or. Governments always have ways of raising money. We had COVID, which came out of nowhere, and the government found hundreds of billions of pounds to spend on it. There is always money when the government really, really needs it, and the markets know that. That's why
and junior doctors.
Look, Martin, I support a big and generous state, as you know. And that I think that includes having a bigger defence budget, given the circumstances that we currently live in. It doesn't mean that other people need to suffer as a result.
OK, Jonathan, let's have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. And let's go now to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine Forster is in the north of England today with Labour top brass talking about the Northern Powerhouse, a conversation I think we've heard endless amount of times, yet nothing really seems to change in the north. But Catherine, can I pull you back to the conversation about what's happening now at the White House? Zelenskyy is expected imminently following in the footsteps of Sir Keir Starmer yesterday. Can I ask you for your reaction to how you think Sir Keir Starmer performed yesterday at the White House?
Well, I think it was a huge relief to them, and I think they're absolutely delighted. I thought it was pretty extraordinary because Sir Keir Starmer, let's face it, hasn't had as many fans as you might have expected after that huge election victory. He's had all sorts of unfortunate nicknames, two-tier, Keir Starmer, the farmer harmer, never hear Keir, and so on and so forth. But suddenly, there he was in the White House with the most unpredictable and important man of them all, Donald Trump, the president, and the president is absolutely singing his praises, saying that they get on famously, and saying, you know, whatever he's being paid, he's worth it, he's a tough negotiator, talking about a trade deal, talking about potentially the UK being exempt from those tariffs that Trump seems determined to slap on the EU, getting very, very, very special treatment indeed. Clearly, they had done their homework. They'd wargamed all sorts of scenarios and the best way to respond. They clearly recognised too that our trump card, and yes, forgive the pun, couldn't resist it, but is the fact that Trump loves the United Kingdom and really loves the royal family. I was very struck back in December when I went over to Paris for the Notre Dame opening. Trump was there, Macron had invited him, and he talked so fondly afterwards of meeting Prince William, how wonderful Prince William was. So they've capitalised, haven't they, big time on that soft power, his love for the royal family, brandishing that letter with great flourish, wanting the reply. For somebody, Sir Keir Starmer is not a showman, it's not in his natural sort of gift, is it? But managed incredibly effectively to navigate Donald Trump. But of course, despite all of that, despite all the positive news for the government, potentially on the Chagos Islands, though I think we should wait to see what the detail is, because I'm not convinced that Donald Trump is completely across that. But despite that, what Starmer really wanted from Trump, I think the security guarantee for any sort of peace deal in Ukraine, the knowledge that the US would definitely be there. He didn't get that, did he? Because Trump is keen to say, well, you know, we're going to have guys there with this minerals deal. That's not the same as saying, well, we will provide air cover, you know, if you put boots on the ground, as Starmer and indeed Macron have said they will do. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, but certainly Trump was more positive about Zelenskyy, wasn't he? He seemed surprised that he'd called him a dictator only a week before, and really caused a lot of concern about that. He said that Zelenskyy is very brave and that they'd fought very hard. Even talked about Ukraine potentially getting some of the territory back. But the devil, of course, will be in the detail. We'll have to see what this minerals deal is that they are signing. I thought it was significant too that Starmer twice actually sort of answered back, one with JD Vance on free speech, saying that it's important in this country that they absolutely protect it. Of course, JD Vance and many others would take a different view on that, but also correcting Trump, as Macron did, about the fact that we haven't just loaned all this money. Some of this has been gifted.
OK, thank you very much there, Catherine Forster. We have to leave it there and move on as we await the arrival of Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House. Now let's take the opinion in of the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who joins me on the show. Suella, always a pleasure to have your company. I know you're in Fareham there protesting about the sellouts of an extraordinary, luxurious set of apartments to asylum seekers. Before we get to that, can I just get your take on events at the White House? Can we start with, how do you think Sir Keir Starmer performed yesterday? They're calling him Starmer the Charmer. Did he charm you?
Well, listen, I found it a little bit interesting, let's say, and it made me chuckle. I recalled some of the things Keir Starmer has said about President Trump in the past. David Lammy, I think, has called him a neo-Nazi sociopath. And there they were, taking the knee, almost fawning over President Trump and acting as if that was all make-believe, and obviously inviting him to a second state visit when I think most of the cabinet has signed a motion banning him from a state visit. So it was an interesting, U-turn on their previous position. But listen, whatever's in the national interest is something I will support, and we always need a strong relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States, whoever is in charge.
And do you feel, Ms Braverman, that the deal we're about to see take place, the visit of Zelenskyy to the White House, which is, everyone is saying, is about carving up the natural resources of Ukraine to pay back that war debt, is that a fair deal? Is that the sort of thing that you would back? We can't have an endless war where endless billions of pounds of British taxpayers' money go into Ukraine forever, can we?
We need to bring an end to the needless loss of life, and we need to ensure that Putin stops killing innocent Ukrainians. Putin started this war, and the Ukrainians have shown incredible bravery, courage and resilience. But this cannot be a never-ending conflict. Any peace deal will involve compromise. Anything to secure peace will involve give and take. And at first sight, this deal looks like a pragmatic one, which I think would be in the interests of the West. But we need to guarantee Ukraine's ongoing security. That is absolutely essential. I think if that is an outcome from this deal, then it must be something that has to be seriously considered.
Superb, Suella. Now then, as we await the arrival of Volodymyr Zelenskyy there to the White House, let's talk about the reason you're in Fareham, your constituency, of course. An astonishing situation. Waits House, a story we've covered on GBNews before on my channel. I've spoken with locals, constituents of yours, who are outraged about the fact a huge luxury pile, a £7 million complex, is about to be gifted to asylum seekers.
Yep, you heard it on GBNews first, and it is outrageous. I've been speaking to local residents just today who are furious, they're scared, and they feel very let down by this proposal which is on the table at the moment. This is a very good quality property in the heart of Fareham, in quite a historic part of the town, in a conservation area. There's a lot of elderly people who live locally near a school, very residential area, and the prospect of frankly, single young men who are asylum seekers staying here at the behest of the taxpayer really is infuriating. We have over 1,000 people locally on our housing waiting list here in Fareham, and that's why I'm urging Fareham Borough Council to do the right thing. They have the opportunity to purchase this property or to lease it and to use it for local housing needs. That's what local people want, and it's what I'm urging them to do.
Do you think that's going to happen? Because as I understand it, the council are saying they're potless. It's a £7 million investment. And meanwhile, of course, as we see nationwide, time after time after time, the Home Office swoops in with a big wad of taxpayer-backed cash. Serco come in, they pay the higher price, they take these properties over. Locals forced out. Locals don't have a voice. Do you think that sense can prevail? Do you think that the will of the local people will prevail? I understand there's a protest, is there not, tomorrow morning at about 11 o'clock in this area?
Thousands of people have spoken already very loudly about their views. They want the local council, who I know work very hard and are, doing generally a very good job, but they want the local council to step in and save this property from the asylum seekers. And if the council were to do that and negotiate constructively with the owner of the property, then the Home Office, having run the Home Office, I do know how it operates, the Home Office would withdraw from the process. If the council believed that local people should come first, that local housing needs should come first, then they should buy or lease this property. They can afford it. There are lots of assurances that have been made. The property has been inspected rigorously. It is structurally sound. It is safe. It has passed all its building regulations. It can be occupied tomorrow. And I think that there is a very clear pathway to resolving this situation. And I very much hope that the Fareham Borough Council does the right thing by local people.
And Suella Braverman, Fareham Borough Council, it's a Conservative council, right? So this is you as a Conservative Member of Parliament applying firm pressure, shall we say, to a Conservative council. What do you think they're going to do?
Listen, I unfortunately don't have any decision-making power within the council. All I can do is speak faithfully on behalf of my constituents, and that's what I'm doing. My constituents come first, and their needs and their voices override any kind of party politics. This is the right thing to do. We shouldn't have asylum seekers here in Fareham. The Labour government has let this illegal immigration problem spiral out of control. We've already seen a 30% increase since they got into power. The numbers of asylum claimants are at a record level, and we can't trust the government. It is now on the council to step in and do the right thing by the local community. The people of Fareham have spoken very, very loudly. I'm here as their voice. And so I just will keep urging the council to do the right thing, and they have my support in pursuing that option.
Suella Braverman, as we still await the arrival of Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the White House, could I ask you for your broader opinion on, if you like, an MOT? How do you think the Labour Party are performing on the issue of immigration? Of course, they were handed a pretty bad deck of cards, it has to be said. The previous government did let millions of legal migrants in, and the flights didn't get off to Rwanda. I know that the government tried their hardest, but that didn't precipitate a victory. The numbers are getting worse in terms of asylum. We saw yesterday the numbers doubled in 2024 as opposed to 2021. Do you have any faith in the Labour Party when they say they're going to smash these gangs?
It's one of the biggest lies that this government has peddled, that they're going to smash the gangs. This government will not stop the boats. And that's not just, a slogan. That is borne out by the numbers. The numbers have gone in only one direction since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, and that is up. As I said, they've increased. The number of illegal arrivals has increased by 30%. What did Labour do upon arrival in government? They scrapped the closest thing that they had to a deterrent, the Rwanda scheme. That was basically switching the green light on to illegal migrants across the world, saying that Britain's borders were open. And that was a very irresponsible thing to do. They've done nothing of any substance to tackle the problem that is only getting worse. And the figures yesterday paint a very, very concerning picture. But that's their national failure. It's communities like here in Fareham which will bear the brunt. We have, as I said, over 1,000 people who are in desperate need of social housing here in Fareham. British people from the Fareham community, people from our local area. Their needs should be put first. But what have we seen? we've seen this government put the needs of asylum seekers first, because they're increasing the number of hotels that they're using to accommodate asylum seekers.
Okay.
They're increasing the capacity and the resources.
Okay, Suella Braverman, we have to cut you short there, I'm afraid, because Donald Trump has now just emerged from the White House. Suella Braverman, thank you very much for joining us today on GB News. Donald Trump there, as you can see, emerging from that historic doorway at the White House. And that must surely mean that the arrival of Volodymyr Zelenskyy is imminent. We saw identical pictures to this yesterday. There we go, the beast. This is the car, has turned up, the official limousine of the White House. The Ukrainian and the US flags on the front there of that magnificent vehicle. There is Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, has stepped out of the vehicle, shaking hands with Donald Trump, the president. The demeanour seems good. He seems pretty chirpy. It's going to be the talks of his life, potentially signing away the future mineral rights of Ukraine. The Ukrainian president and the US president there go inside the White House, and now they will go into those intense meetings talking about the military future. Zelenskyy will no doubt have a series of demands about the future protection of his country. He wants to try and guarantee American support in terms of financial support, hopefully in terms of military support. Yesterday, however, Donald Trump was talking very firm, and even firmer the day before when he introduced his cabinet to the world for the first time. He was saying, we want our money back. The multi-billions that the USA has put into Ukraine since the beginning of this war. Of course, that was 3 years ago this Monday. As many as $900 billion. And initially, this minerals deal involved Donald Trump saying that they wanted an exclusive rights to $500 billion worth of rare earth metals out of the ground. Of course, to the east of Ukraine, there are these hugely rich mineral belts under the ground. A lot of them, by the way, have fallen into the territory now that's been taken over by Vladimir Putin. Rare earth minerals to build batteries, the technology for the future, the kind, actually, of minerals that China has taken over around the world with its soft power expansion into Africa, spending billions of yen on infrastructure in African countries in return for access to those minerals, which have allowed China to become a new tech superpower. America has been asleep at the wheel. Actually, the entire world has been asleep at the wheel. China took over these resources without even firing a shot. And now, after the 3-year war in Ukraine, Donald Trump wants some of those minerals from Ukraine. That's the conversation that's about to happen. A huge moment in geopolitical history, and we'll bring you full updates on that throughout the show, of course, as that happens. We're hoping to have a live press conference later on with Volodymyr Zelenskyy and with President Donald Trump. We'll bring that to you, of course, as and when it happens. Let's return briefly now to that previous story. That's the Fareham migrant protest story. Of course, we just covered with Suella Braverman, who's the MP for Fareham. And Fareham Borough Council have said this. After considering the proposal, Fareham Borough Council has responded to the Home Office, outlining strong concerns and objections on several grounds. Speaking in the House of Commons in response to this matter, the Home Office Minister Angela Eagle said this. The safety and well-being of the local communities in which asylum accommodation is located is of paramount importance. The Home Office does conduct mandatory identity, criminality and security checks and tries to minimise the impact on the local community. But of course, a protest will carry on at 11 a.m. in that constituency at that location. And coming up next, we have a bombshell new poll that's revealed that if there were to be a general election held tomorrow, then Reform UK will come out on top. The electoral calculus poll puts Reform UK at nearly 26% to hedging out Labour at just under 25%. And it's more bad news for the Conservatives, who now lag behind in third place with a mere 22% of the votes. We can now speak with the data scientist at Electoral Calculus, Marwan Reich. Marwan, welcome to the show. It's an astonishing report, a real eye-popper, and indeed, there are some serious big beasts that could lose their seats if this were to precipitate as an election right now. Tell us more.
Hi, Martin, and good afternoon to you and your viewers. So, yes, what this is it's an aggregation of recent opinion polls layered on top of our own modelling. And our figures show, as of the end of February, that Reform UK are set to be the biggest party in the next Parliament. Now, Obviously, we're quite a few years away from it, but I've got some seats that I want to share with your viewers. So sure. You were talking about the Home Office earlier, and who runs the Home Office? Yvette Cooper. Her seat is now in trouble. She is now projected to lose her seat to Reform UK at the next general election. When you look at the other figures, you can see that the Conservatives are net up, but they are still going to have some scalps, especially in the areas around Lincolnshire, which used to be their heartlands. Obviously, we've got the local elections coming up in May. Two data points I think we'll want to look at are the Greater Lincolnshire mayoralty and the Hull and East Yorkshire mayoralty, which will be key targets for reform. We also see that the opinion polls are pretty much in play. We've got three-way races up and down the country. But your viewers might want to know that Reform UK have been consistently polling in the mid-20s. But if they want to have a majority at the next election, the magic number for them nationally is 31%.
Yeah, and we see there on our screens the ministers at risk. Quickly trot through those names: Angela Rayner, Yvette Cooper, Pat McFadden, Wes Streeting, Jonathan Reynolds, Liz Kendall, John Healey, Bridget Phillipson and Lisa Nandy. All of them would lose their seats in this poll, and all but one of them to Reform. The only one who'd lose their seat to another party is Wes Streeting, and he'd lose his seat to the Conservatives if this poll were to carry through. Now, as I understand it, Marwan, the most likely outcome of this poll is a slight majority for Reform UK, which then puts in the realms, of course, of doing some kind of coalition deal with the Conservatives.
That's right. And if you look at the straws in the wind that we've got up to this point, obviously polling data is polling data, but what's the real data telling us? We can look at local council by-elections, which can give us an indication of how well the parties are performing nationally. So there were two by-elections yesterday that I want to draw attention to. There was one in Vincent Square in the borough of Westminster, where the Conservatives gained a seat from Labour. And there was a seat in Norfolk in the Bedingfield ward, where Reform got a majority of votes cast for the first time. So this might cause both parties to now think about pacts, think about alliances and tactical voting to keep out the centrist and left-leaning parties.
And what's interesting, Marwan, is that we are now seeing polls are polls, and we're a long way off from a general election, but we are seeing something of a trend. And that trend seems to be that the Labour Party are hemorrhaging votes left, right and centre, literally. They are going to independents, they are going to Lib Dems, they are going to Reform. This poll has them losing 234 seats, an astonishing drop, falling faster than a Mike Amesbury constituent. The Conservatives putting votes on, slightly 21 seats on, but it is Reform going to 142 seats from a mere 5 seats. Is this likely to carry through into the real world, or would this be the kind of political revolution we've never seen before in British history?
All eyes on May the 1st, when we have the biggest test of the party since the 2024 general election, is what I'd say to that.
And don't forget, a lot of those elections have been kicked down the road. I think it was about 9 million votes have been postponed because of the changing of constituency boundaries, all to play for. And a couple of key points just to point out before you depart. There'll be some other MPs, big names, losing their seats if this poll were to carry through. Jess Phillips, Labour Party, Stephen Kinnock, Kim Ledbetter, they would all lose their seats. And also some Tories would lose their seats to the Reform Party. David Davis and Sir Edward Lee, two pretty right-wing Conservative MPs there. Perhaps they might want to think about having a word with Nigel Farage. It's just a poll. There's a long way to go, but it's fascinating stuff. Another indication, perhaps, there could be a sea change coming ahead in British politics. Thank you very, very much for joining us today on GB News. That's the data scientist at Electoral Calculus, Marwan Riak. Thank you very much indeed. Now, lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including a Labour minister is under pressure after kissing the hands of a controversial Muslim cleric. But first, here's your latest news headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Hello there, very good afternoon to you. Our headlines: the US President Donald Trump has welcomed Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House for a meeting that could determine the direction of the war with Russia. The two leaders are perhaps in the Oval Office right now. Now, they are expected to sign a deal that will give the US access to Ukraine's rare mineral resources, and they'll likely discuss how to end the war with Russia. Now, Trump has suggested the minerals deal could help pay for US backing. Well, Zelenskyy, the third European leader to visit the White House this week. Sir Keir Starmer was there yesterday. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, on Monday. They both tried to persuade Trump to guarantee European security in any deal made with Vladimir Putin. There's the meeting. It took place about 10 minutes ago. And one would hope it's a little more cordial than some of their recent comments, because, just a week ago or so, Zelenskyy said Trump was living in a disinformation space created by Russia. And the US president accused his Ukrainian counterpart of being a dictator. But hopefully they smooth all that over, and we'll bring you any details of a deal and indeed the press conference, which should take place about 7 o'clock tonight. Well, the Minister for Overseas Development, Annalise Dodds, has resigned over the Prime Minister's decision to slash the foreign aid budget. The money's going to be used to fund defence spending instead, after Sir Keir Starmer announced plans to raise Britain's defence budget from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP. In a resignation letter, Ms Dodds said the cuts would remove food and healthcare from desperate people, deeply harming the UK's reputation. GB News has won its judicial review of the TV regulator Ofcom's decisions that two shows hosted by Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg breached the broadcasting code. The landmark ruling in the High Court found that Ofcom's conclusions that the broadcasts in May and June 2023 breached the code's impartiality and content regulations. Well, it found they were unlawful, and as a result, the court quashed the decisions and awarded GB News its legal costs. It's the first time the watchdog has lost a judicial review of one of its own decisions in relation to the broadcasting code. A spokesperson for Ofcom has said the following: "We accept the court's guidance on this important aspect of due impartiality in broadcast news and the clarity set out in the judgment. We will now review and consult on proposed changes to the broadcasting code to restrict politicians from presenting news in any type of programme to ensure this is clear for all broadcasters." Greek police have fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators throwing petrol bombs as mass protests to mark the second anniversary of the country's worst rail disaster have been marred by violence. Now, dozens of hooded protesters clashed with security forces earlier as they attempted to storm the barricades in front of the parliament in central Athens. Hundreds of thousands of people have been taking part in countrywide demonstrations. They're demanding justice for the crash that left 57 people dead and dozens more injured. An inquiry on Thursday concluded the collision of a passenger train and a freight train was caused by human error, poor maintenance and inadequate staffing. The inquiry found that the safety gaps that caused the crash have not yet been filled. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more in just under half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Cumbria, the M6 is closed southbound after a collision. It shut from junction 36 at Kirkby Lonsdale along to junction 34 at Lancaster. In South Yorkshire, the M180 is partly blocked both ways after a vehicle caught fire. That's between junction 1 at Bawtry and junction 2 for Gainsborough. In Staffordshire, there are long delays on the M6 southbound. 2 lanes are shut there. That's for investigation work after a collision last night, and it's partly blocked between junction 16 for Crewe and 15 for Stoke-on-Trent. And in Buckinghamshire, the M1 northbound is partly blocked after a collision between junction 14 at Milton Keynes and junction 15 for Northampton.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I watched the video yesterday with Meghan Markle announcing this relaunch. What did you make of the video?
it's constantly this rebranding thing that's going on, which is quite interesting. We've had different kind of, way back to Sussex Royal at the very beginning. Here we've now got this new lifestyle series that's coming out. Obviously, she's got this new brand that's going to go alongside it. It's very difficult because royals, as we've said many, many times before, this is not something royals typically kind of do. And obviously these are no longer, if you like, working members of the royal family, but still, Prince Harry, as I keep saying, is a senior member of the royal family. So it's quite a kind of uncharted territory that they're going into. And as I said, this is a bit of a disaster because everything they seem to kind of do when it comes to branding, it just doesn't seem to work.
They seem to really be struggling to find their purpose in the US. Do you think that's fair? I mean, Prince Harry, of course, has got the Invictus Games, which is just the most wonderful thing that he has set up. But it appears that they're not obviously part of the royal family anymore in terms of working royals. They're not senior working royals, but not able to make it in the business world yet either.
You're right, Elliot. I think the Invictus Games is definitely the kind of saving grace. That's the thing that everybody kind of admires and respects them for. But then it's when they keep going back into this kind of celebrity branded lifestyle. I don't think anyone's really that hugely interested. As you said, in the States, you kind of hear people are for them, people are against them. I think most people would rather that they went kind of doing this. I think we've said this so many times before that, as members of the royal family, they should continue down that line and going into this kind of business world. It just, I think I'm right in saying historically with royals and kind of business, it doesn't really work.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:39 on this Friday afternoon with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Labour Minister Wahid Khan has been criticised for meeting a controversial Pakistani cleric who claimed that COVID was being spread due to women's immodesty. An astonishing story brought to us now by our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who has the details. Charlie, what on earth is going on? This sounds ridiculous.
Well, Martin, the cleric is called Tariq Jamil, and earlier this month, he was on a speaking tour across the United Kingdom, actually sold out in many of the venues, speaking in Glasgow, in Oldham, in Greater Manchester. And while he was travelling around the country, he met with the Minister for Faith and Communities and Resettlement. That's Lord Khan, Wajid Khan of Burnley. Now, in this meeting, which we're showing footage of now on your screens, you can see Lord Khan meeting with the cleric Tariq Jamil, who is a major figure in Pakistan. We can see him also, just in a moment, greeting others. There's a significant entourage with him. It's being filmed by somebody else there, you can see as well. And you can see there Lord Khan kissing the hands of Tariq Jamil. But the controversy here is that at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Jamil said that the disease was being spread due to the deity's wrath at dishonesty in society and the immodesty of women. At the time, the Pakistani Human Rights Minister, Shireen Mazani, said the comments were absurd. But in that footage, we've seen that discussion and that meeting taking place, a ministerial-style meeting at the end with Lord Khan and Tariq Jamil sitting with flags of Pakistan and the United Kingdom between them. So this Islamic scholar, he's revered in Pakistan with millions of followers on social media, but at the same time, questions have been raised with the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, asking why is a government minister responsible for community relations meeting with a cleric who has made extreme outbursts? Why is he hosting a ministerial-style meeting with a self-appointed community leader? What was discussed? Mr. Jenrick continued to GB News that his actions undermine community cohesion. We need answers and a full account of what happened. Now, we have had a statement from Lord Khan of Burnley in reaction to our inquiries. He told GB News that following the death of my mother last month, thousands of people have visited, often without invitation, on an open house basis to offer their condolences on this bereavement. He says, I did not personally invite this individual, and this interaction should in no way be seen as an endorsement of these deeply offensive comments, which I condemn entirely. So that was Lord Khan's explanation. We did go back to the Ministry of Housing, Local Communities as well, to ask for an explanation as to why that ministerial-style meeting had taken place. The fact that he said he wasn't personally inviting Tariq Jamil. We asked who did invite Tariq Jamil, and why does it appear that such a large entourage had met him in the street? We also asked where the meeting took place. None of these questions were answered by that government department, and Lord Khan, it seems, has stuck by that statement, with the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick asking questions as to how that meeting could have taken place.
Of course, Charlie Peters, it is entirely possible that these comments weren't known to Lord Khan, but it does seem a little bit, how should we put it, coincidental that he had them. And thank goodness COVID isn't being passed by Muslim men hugging and kissing each other's hands.
Well, yes, indeed, Martin. But some of the concern that we've also heard from other sources and commentators come, of course, as the government is very keen to ensure community relations are at the forefront of their agenda. There's obviously a lot of pressure within Labour not to lose any more Muslim votes after a lot of really atrocious polling with the Muslim community in Britain. So perhaps with those questions that we put to the government department after their explanation, we're not expecting a response, really, and I think they're just hoping that this issue goes away entirely.
Okay, well, Charlie Peters, thank you, as ever, for shining a light on these uncomfortable areas. Excellent reporting, no less than I expect from you, Charlie Peters. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, for instance, in some search of some winter sun this year, and who can blame you? Then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Unsettled across many parts of the Mediterranean, some heavy rain, also some thunderstorms, particularly affecting parts of Spain. Some heavy showers for Madeira and parts of Tenerife, and some heavy and prolonged spells of potentially thundery rain, particularly across southeastern parts of Spain. Some heavy showers affecting Nice and also Rome, parts of the Adriatic coastline, but largely settled across Greece. And it is largely an improving picture as we head into next week, with the best of the temperatures once again across Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head towards the weekend, we can expect some frost and also some fog to start in the morning. A little bit damp at times across the northwest. Otherwise, there's going to be lots of dry and settled weather. It's all thanks to this area of high pressure across the country, bringing us some fine and settled conditions. That's away from the northwest, though, where we'll eventually see some clouds spilling in. Also some outbreaks of rain by the time we reach the morning, and winds starting to strengthen here too, particularly across the far northwest of Scotland. But elsewhere, plenty of clear skies, but that means temperatures are likely to dip below freezing. So a chilly start once again to the weekend, likely to see quite a widespread frost across central and southern parts, and possibly even some fog, maybe even some freezing fog to start the day. It's a different story across parts of the north and northwest, though much cloudier here. Some outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle, eventually clearing from the far northwest of Scotland. Still quite blustery here though, and a few showers moving through. So quite a cloudy and damp start across Northern Ireland. Perhaps quite a hazy start across northern parts of England, but elsewhere plenty of bright skies, but once again a cold start, frost in places, and perhaps a little bit murky where we see some fog. But that should clear quite nicely through the morning. Once again, allowing another fine and settled day ahead across many central and southern parts of the UK, perhaps turning a little bit hazier into the afternoon as we see a build of high cloud, and a little bit cloudy across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, perhaps a slight touch of light rain and drizzle, but brighter across Scotland later with some showers skirting the far north, and fairly similar temperatures too, round about where they should be for the time of year, highs of 10 to 11 Celsius. Then through into the evening, we'll continue to see this band of cloud. Outbreaks of rain slowly skirt their way southeastward, so that might just stop widespread frost developing. And into next week, once again, widespread high pressure, so lots of fine and dry settled conditions to come.
From the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 4:48. Welcome to GB News with me, Martin Daubney, on this Friday afternoon. Now, I've got some breaking news for you now, and it's this. Donald Trump says that the Ukrainian minerals deal will be signed today as he's meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Of course, he just walked into the White House moments ago here. We showed that on GB News. And firms face uncertainty. Moving on now to our next story, because firms face uncertainty in Northern Ireland as they fear that coming under the Trump regime's tariffs on the European Union. We can now speak with GB News' Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Dougie Beattie, you and I have spoken endlessly about the fact that Northern Ireland still is within the regulatory orbit of Brussels. Might Trump's EU tariffs prove the fact that that's the case, and might Northern Ireland get hammered by these EU tariffs?
Well, you're completely right, Martin. That's exactly what will happen, because, as you've said, the Northern Ireland is held inside the EU because of the backstop protocol framework document, 3 different prime ministers, and the framework document was actually the worst of the lot of them, and that was the last one brought in by Rishi Sunak. We were told that we would have the best of both worlds here, and of course we've had none of that. In fact, we haven't had one job in Northern Ireland that wasn't created by the public sector for actually making sure that things coming from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, into this part of the UK, were held to EU tariffs, and that has really hit businesses in Northern Ireland quite hard. Now, if you take the tariff-free trade deal with that Donald Trump is looking at with the UK, Northern Ireland will have to be left out of that, because of course that means that not only will be facing our businesses here facing tariffs and examinations of goods coming into Northern Ireland, to make sure that the UK has not let any EU goods into America, we will have to face those same tariffs on the way back out again. And this is causing real concern in Northern Ireland. I'm standing in Enniskillen at the moment. It's a border town. In fact, this morning that first of that Intertrade UK panel met, chaired by Arlene Foster and different economists on it. And they are looking really at where the economy will go here, because of course we are the only part of the EU that has no MEP, so we are really controlled by EU commissars, and we have to do exactly as we're told. And just before Christmas, the Alliance Party, the SDLP and Sinn Féin all voted to keep us inside that deal for another 4 years, and that means that there'll be trouble coming down the line for not only Northern Ireland but also the Republic of Ireland.
Now, Dougie, could I ask you, that man Donald Trump, the new president, the new sheriff in town, the former incumbent Joe Biden, his relationship with the Emerald Isle, he couldn't get enough of it. He couldn't stop telling the world how much he loved Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. What's the relationship like between the Trump regime and the regime in the Republic there south of the border?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head again, Martin, because Joe Biden was very much rumoured to be in favour and really pushed for that customs border that was on the island of Ireland to be put into the Irish Sea and splitting us from the UK. Now, Donald Trump, if he wanted, could probably put the same pressure and get that reversed. But of course, relations between the Republic of Ireland and America are at an all-time low for a number of reasons. Number one, before Trump got into power, the Taoiseach and various members of government in the Republic really attacked Trump, calling him all sorts of names. And then, of course, after that, their stance on the Israeli-Gaza conflict is very much at odds with the United States, and most importantly for the Republic of Ireland. They have effectively become a tax haven for American companies with lower commercial rates there, and they will be on America's radar. The White House will be looking at them quite a lot because there is a huge amount of American companies in the Republic of Ireland giving to their GDP and not paying tax to their home country in the United States. So things are very, very touchy, we would say, with the Republic of Ireland and that American relationship at the moment. And we'll see how that goes for St. Patrick's Day. Of course, we've had the First Minister from Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill, saying that she wasn't going, although an invite hadn't been given out yet. But you can imagine any politician would want to go and meet Trump.
OK, Doogie, we've got a quick minute left. I do, however, understand that JD Vance, the Vice President, has strong links to Northern Ireland, so maybe that could be a lifeline there for the country. Tell us more.
Well, of course, America broke away from Britain because of an internal border, strangely enough, a taxation border in the UK's own country, that with America. That's where the Boston Tea Party happened. And of course, most of the Presbyterians and Ulster Scots left here back in the 1700s after the Williamite Wars. The Bill of Rights that America stands on were those very bills that King William brought with him in 1688. And the Vance family comes from Ulster. It is rumoured that one of them died in the siege of Derry, and then the family left and went to Cincinnati and then down into Philadelphia. And it is well known, I mean, even from his own book, Hillbilly Analogy, hillbillies were Billy's boys, William's men, and they were all Williamites that arrived in America and actually signed many signatures on the American Declaration of Independence are from men from Ulster.
OK, we're going to leave it there. Doogie Beattie, a glorious history lesson and a hope for the future. Maybe JD Vance can come over and be as proud of NI as Biden was of the Republic. Now, coming up next, we've got to hit more on the historic visit from Zelenskyy, who is over in the White House. But we're joined next by Reform's Rupert Lowe. But now is your weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head towards the weekend, we can expect some frost and also some fog to start in the morning. A little bit damp at times across the northwest. Otherwise, there's going to be lots of dry and settled weather. It's all thanks to this area of high pressure across the country, bringing us some fine and settled conditions. That's away from the northwest, though, where we'll eventually see some clouds spilling in. Also some outbreaks of rain by the time we reach the morning. And winds starting to strengthen here too, particularly across the far northwest of Scotland. But elsewhere, plenty of clear skies, but that means temperatures are likely to dip below freezing. So a chilly start once again to the weekend, likely to see quite a widespread frost across central and southern parts, and possibly even some fog, maybe even some freezing fog to start the day. It's a different story across parts of the north and northwest, though much cloudier here. Some outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle, eventually clearing from the far northwest of Scotland. Still quite blustery here, though, and a few showers moving through. So quite a cloudy and damp start across Northern Ireland. Perhaps quite a hazy start across northern parts of England. But elsewhere, plenty of bright skies, but once again, a cold start, frost in places, and perhaps a little bit murky where we see some fog. But that should clear quite nicely through the morning. Once again, allowing another fine and settled day ahead across many central and southern parts of the UK, perhaps turning a little bit hazier into the afternoon as we see a build of high cloud and a little bit cloudy across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, perhaps a slight touch of light rain and drizzle, but brighter across Scotland later with some showers skirting the far north and fairly similar temperatures too, round about where they should be for the time of year, highs of 10 to 11 Celsius. Then through into the evening, we'll continue to see this band of cloud. Outbreaks of rain slowly skirt their way southeastward, so that might just stop widespread frost developing. And into next week, once again, widespread high pressure, so lots of fine and dry settled conditions to come.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
the latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Cumbria, the M6 is closed southbound after a collision, shut from junction 36 at Kirkby Lonsdale along to junction 34 for Lancaster. In South Yorkshire, the M180 is partly blocked in both directions after a vehicle caught fire between junction 1 at Bawtry and junction 2 for Gainsborough. In Cheshire, the M6 southbound, there are 3 lanes shut there after a collision involving a lorry between junction 17 for Crewe and 16 for Stoke-on-Trent and the A500. And in Essex, delays on the M11 northbound. That's partly blocked after a collision. It's between junction 8A and junction 9, the turn-off for Saffron Walden.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British Giveaway. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16 and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. on this glorious Friday afternoon, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Donald Trump has welcomed Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, to the White House. You can see live pictures, not live, sorry. That was about an hour ago at the White House, as he says that the Ukraine mineral deal will be signed today. A huge moment in history. And first, they called him Sabir Korma. Then it was two-tier Keir, free gear Keir, never here Keir, jet set Starmer, and some even called him Starmer, the farmer harmer. Now, after his historic visit to the White House yesterday, at last, the Prime Minister has got a nickname he actually likes. It's Starmer the Charmer. But not everybody has been charmed by the PM. On today's show, I'll talk to Reform's Rupert Lowe, who says that his Chagos deal is an absolute betrayal. And a Thunderbolts new poll has put Reform UK on course to take the most seats at the next general election. And in more worrying news for Labour, 9 Labour ministers, look at them on your screen now, 9 of them are set to lose their seats, with Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper at danger of being swept aside by a turquoise tidal wave. And Starmer the Charmer wooed Donald Trump with a full royal visit to Britain as a grinning David Lammy looked on yesterday. But back in 2018, Mr. Lammy said this.
We want to see the end of a president who says we should put up walls, who says that Mexicans are rapists.
There we go, there's always a video, there's always a tweet, and here's the big question. Are Labour right royal hypocrites? Well, it's a show. Pleasure to have your company. So history is being made today as we speak in the White House. Volodymyr Zelenskyy doing that minerals deal. Initially, it was $500 billion worth of minerals Donald Trump demanded. Now the demands are expected to be 50% of whatever is extracted from the ground to repay the billions and billions of dollars that America put into Ukraine during the 3-year war. Now, don't forget, until very recently, Britain was still paying a war debt to the United States ourselves. Now, coming up soon as well, Rupert Lowe will join us to react to that bombshell poll, which puts Reform as the leading party at the next election. And he's been very critical of Donald Trump, very critical of Sir Keir Starmer over that Chagos deal. He calls it a complete betrayal, a total surrender, and he's urging President Trump to reconsider. Rupert Lowe joins us shortly, but first, here's your news headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Martin. Our top stories. The US President Donald Trump has welcomed Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House for a meeting that could determine the direction of the war with Russia. Now, the two leaders met a short time ago and enjoyed a brief handshake. They're expected to sign a deal that will give the US access to Ukraine's rare mineral resources, and they will discuss how to end the war with Russia. Trump has suggested the minerals deal could help pay for US backing following any ceasefire. Well, Zelenskyy, the third European leader to visit the White House this week after the Prime Minister yesterday and the French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday. They both tried to persuade Donald Trump to guarantee European security in any deal made with Vladimir Putin. And today's meeting comes a week after Zelenskyy said Trump was living in a disinformation space created by Russia, and the US President accused his Ukrainian counterpart of being a dictator. Annalise Dodds, the International Development Minister, has quit her post over Sir Keir Starmer's decision to slash the international aid budget. Earlier this week, Sir Keir Starmer revealed international aid would be cut to 0.3% of GDP so that he could raise defence funding from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP, a message he took to the White House for his meeting with Donald Trump. Well, in a resignation letter, Ms Dodds said, "While I disagree with the decision, I continue to support the government and its determination to deliver the change our country needs." Now, Sir Keir Starmer has said it was a painful and difficult decision, and that's been echoed by his deputy, Angela Rayner.
I'm really sorry to hear if Annalise has resigned. I've been in the convention of the North Conference, but it is a really difficult decision that was made. But it was absolutely right that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet endorsed the Prime Minister's actions to spend more money on defence. And we want to see the economy grow so that we can then get back to having more money to spend on things like overseas aid and on our public services.
Now, counter-terrorism police are assessing whether police action is required after the BBC admitted to paying a family with ties to Hamas when making a controversial documentary about Gaza. The BBC has apologised for serious flaws in the making of the film, which featured a Hamas minister's son. The broadcaster said it has no plans to broadcast Gaza how to survive a war zone again in its current form, or indeed return it to the iPlayer. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy is set to hold an urgent meeting with the chairman of the BBC after concerns were raised over the documentary and the plans to return it to the broadcaster. Thousands of demonstrators are striking in central Athens to demand justice 2 years after a deadly train crash that killed 57 people. Greek police have had to fire tear gas at protesters who threw petrol bombs. Live pictures here from central Athens, where the picture is a little bit calmer now. The Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, had warned people against any violence ahead of the anniversary. Well, February 2023, a passenger train filled with students collided with a freight train in the centre of the country. Well, 2 years on, many people are still angry that safety gaps that caused the crash have not yet been filled. An inquiry yesterday found found that, and also that the investigation has found no one has been convicted for the accident. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has described a new contract agreed with England's GPs as a breakthrough moment. But he's admitted ending the 8 a.m. scramble for appointments will be a challenge. The deal will provide almost £890 million a year to general practices, as well as a reduction in red tape and targets that ministers hope will mean more doctors are freed up to see more patients. Well, people will soon be able to book online and request to see their usual GP, and it's in line with Labour's manifesto promises to bring back family doctors. However, doctors want the government to commit to talks about a completely new national contract for GPs within this Parliament. Finally, Jos Buttler has resigned as England's white ball cricket captain following his side's exit from the Champions Trophy. The move will be confirmed after England's dead rubber match against South Africa on Saturday. Now, their group stage exit at the Champions Trophy in Pakistan is a third flop at a major tournament in the last 18 months. They've relinquished both white ball World Cups, and that clearly left Buttler considering his position. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with more just after 5:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Aaron. Now, Donald Trump has welcomed Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the White House in this past hour as he says that the Ukraine mineral deal will be signed today. And he has also said that compromise will have to be made. And that's after the US president, of course, suggested he will approve Sir Keir Starmer's deal to hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius in a boost for Downing Street. So has the Prime Minister earned himself a new nickname, Starmer the Charmer? Or is he considerably less charming, perhaps, to some? Talking of which, we can now speak with the Reform MP, Rupert Lowe, and also the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Reform MP Rupert Lowe, let's first come directly to you. Rupert, you've been very passionate and very outspoken in your support of the Chagos Islands. You've been very against the proposal to surrender them. And let's get a tweet on the screen now that you put out last night, directly after it seems that Donald Trump was nodding along with what Sir Keir Starmer wants. You said this: the Chagos Islands deal is disgustingly rotten to the core. It does not serve the British taxpayer. It's about human rights lawyers abusing their power to indulge their fantasies. It's a betrayal. I hope that Donald Trump reconsiders his support for it on this. He is wrong. Rupert Lowe, very, very critical there of Donald Trump. Do you think this deal will go ahead, or is there still hope, for you at least, that it might be rescinded?
Well, let me first of all say, Martin, good afternoon. The second thing to say is that I've said this before on GB News, that I think the Chagos deal is a shocking deal. It's what I call three human rights lawyers indulging their fantasy at the expense of the British taxpayer. And by the way, we don't yet know what that total cost is going to be. History is not on the side of logic. Well, history is on the side of logic, it should be. Ultimately, Mauritius has never had any historical claim to the Chagos Islands. The Chagosians don't want to be part of Mauritius. The only link that we've ever had between the two is the common sort of factor is the British. So we basically govern both. They actually even paid a lot of money, £3 million, to renounce any claim that they could possibly have on the Chagos Islands. So look, I mean, strategically, with what's going on in China, it's absolutely crucial that Diego Garcia remains as a functioning and as a sort of sovereign base. We own that at the moment. Why on earth would we give it away and spend billions of pounds unnecessarily? I think Trump has got it wrong. I just hope that the promise of a second state visit, which I consider to be gesture politics at its best, didn't flatter him sufficiently that in the short term he yielded. He did say he yet had to see the details, so I think there's still hope that he might veto the deal. There is absolutely no logic, either strategically or financially, for Britain in surrendering the Chagos Islands to a huge cost which is unnecessary and is going to damage the interests of the taxpayer. So I think it's idiocy, but I think Trump in the short term has got this wrong. Let's hope that in the end the penny drops and common sense prevails.
Okay, let's bring in Peter Edwards. Peter, what's your take?
Good afternoon. Well, I think it's been a very good week for Sir Keir Starmer, particularly on the climb down, looks like on tariffs, Trump tariffs against the UK. And then it looks like the deal for the Chagos Islands is going to go through. There is a case for doing a deal. My concern is perhaps a bit more big picture, that Mauritius are quite close to China. And these days, economically and in terms of national security, Chinese government is not our friend. But I think it's been a good week for Keir Starmer, and given some of the gloomy prognostications we were advised beforehand, you know, Trump would rebuff this London lawyer. Quite the opposite has happened. It's been called a bromance. And I think these are serious matters, and Rupert made some serious points that I disagree with them. I'd make one other one, which is more party political, to be frank, which is the two words we've not heard this week are Nigel Farage. We have a Labour Prime Minister dealing with the most powerful man in the free world, and Nigel Farage hasn't really had a voice.
Rupert.
I'm not privy to what Nigel has or hasn't said to the American administration, Donald Trump, all the people out there, but it seems, you know, I don't know, Martin. When I watched the press conference with David Lammy, as you quite rightly said, watching on rather sort of lamely, having made all those ridiculous comments about Donald Trump, as you say, in 2019 or 2018, whenever it was, as indeed had a lot of the Labour Party. Not only that, they also went and helped lobby for the Democratic Party. So at the end of the day, I couldn't help having this vision of a Donald Trump perpetrating realpolitik, which I actually quite like, and Keir Starmer a bit like a sort of a rather lame youngster in the school playground, sort of cozying up to the school bully. It just seemed to me the whole thing was rather surreal. So I don't buy the idea that there's going to be a bromance between the two. I can't think of two people who are frankly less suited to each other. I think, you know, I think Keir Starmer's probably, if not the most duplicitous prime minister we've ever had. He's pretty close to it. So I don't think he and Trump are cut out to ever be a heavenly partnership.
OK, well, look, let's have a look at some of those comments now, shall we? And previous comments. Keir Starmer used his trip to the White House to present Donald Trump with an invitation to meet the King, as you said. But how did Labour MPs react just a few years ago? Well, look, Foreign Secretary David Lammy might be shaking hands with the President right now. That's there from the Oval Office yesterday. But he had this to say 7 years ago.
We want to see the end of a president who says we should put up walls, who says that Mexicans are rapists, who wants to roll back civil rights. Trump should not be meeting our great monarch. He should not be meeting the Queen. He doesn't deserve it. The offer of this trip was premature in the first place. It's a huge embarrassment to us.
There you go, Lammy changes his tune. And back in 2020, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner said this.
Trump is killing, you know, thousands of Americans by giving them duff advice, and his macho, I'm all right, you know, look at me, I've survived COVID, is an absolute buffoon. He has no place in the White House. He's an embarrassment, and he should be ashamed of himself.
And meanwhile, Health Secretary Wes Streeting signed the 2019 petition to block Trump's state visit and tweeted this. Trump is such an odious, sad little man. Imagine being proud to have that as your president. And the Energy Security and Net Zero Minister Ed Miliband was equally as complimentary back in 2016.
It was delusional fantasy, I must say. The idea that we have shared values with a racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper beggars belief.
Well, there we go. This is the man there now, toadying up to in the White House. Rupert Lowe, there's always a video, there's always a tweet. And actually, do you think the comments they said in the past are more of an insight into what they actually think about Donald Trump than what the grimace, the Richter screen they're putting on now?
It does make me laugh, Ed Miliband describing somebody as delusional, Martin. I mean, I think he needs to take the blank out of his own eye before he starts judging other people on that. But no, look, I mean, these people are clowns. I mean, the entire front bench has zero idea about how to run a business, let alone a country. And they're a farce, frankly. And I honestly watch with horror what they're actually doing to our country. And I think frankly, the election can't come soon enough. And just look at the polls that you alluded to earlier. Reform are getting stronger and stronger. I think the general public have now seen the sort of flaws of the way in which we're governed by this two-party state, with a civil service, a malign civil service behind it, which is not being held to account, which is far too big. All our money is being wasted, by the way, on civil service pensions, far too many staff. There's absolutely never any reduction in the size of the state. It's always a case of, oh, let's have a wealth tax, let's tax the private sector more. No, cut the size of the state, make it more effective. AI is coming, Martin. It's going to be quite easy to do it. The question is, will they ever have the will to do it? The answer probably is no, not unless a party like Reform wins the election. And then hopefully those people who work hard will be able to keep more of their money and spend it the way they want to spend it, rather than seeing it wasted in their name by a state that is incompetent.
OK, I've got a quick breaking news line now before I get at the opinion of Peter Edwards. And it's this. Donald Trump has just said during his meeting with President Zelenskyy, I'm not aligned with Vladimir Putin. I'm aligned with the US and the good of the world. So there we go. Fresh comment. This is the other day. It was Trump saying that Vladimir Putin was very cunning, was very smart. Now he's not aligned with Vladimir Putin. Peter Edwards, get a quick comment there from you about what Rupert Lowe was saying there. He said that the country is being governed by clowns and the general election can't come soon enough.
Well, thank you for summarising, because I couldn't hear Rupert's comments. I think Reform, formerly the Brexit Party, formerly UKIP, formerly the Referendum Party, are in a battle for relevance. You know, I think whether you're left or right, we can all be glad that Britain's relationship with America looks fairly strong and the visit's gone fairly well this week. And I know Reform have had a bit better luck in the polls lately, but Labour government won. They won by miles in a general election. They have a clear agenda, whether it's around elements of rail nationalisation, GB, energy and so on. And what we've consistently seen about Reform is they have very little to talk about beyond immigration and the EU. And it's in their strategic interest to throw rocks at other parties and say a plague on all your houses. But Reform have essentially no economic policy. And it's not just my view. Paul Johnson of the Independent IFS, said Reform economic manifesto was a work of fiction. They're popular, and the concerns that lead people to vote Reform, like law and order and immigration, should be taken seriously. But Reform's leadership shouldn't be taken too seriously because they don't have a prospectus for running the country.
OK, Peter, we've got to leave it there. Rupert Lowe, quick 30 seconds, final word to you.
Well, I think that's just a farce. At the end of the day, Labour won on the lowest turnout, Martin, as we know. They won largely, actually, as a result of the fact that people were turning to Reform. I think most people can now see how dysfunctional the entire organs of the state are. So we need an election. We need it soon, and we need it before Rachel Reeves and the entire front bench reduce Britain. It's already becoming a joke to a total farce. And, we can't come soon enough. Now, there's a huge job to do. And you haven't obviously read our contract with the people, clearly, but there is a contract with the people. That's got to be worked on. Reform have now got to come up with detailed, thought-through policies with people who are experts and present them to the British people. Okay. And then we have to deliver them when we get into power.
OK, we have to leave it there. Rupert Lowe and Peter Edwards, thank you very, very much for joining us both on GB News today. Thank you. Now, moving on, counter-terrorism police are assessing whether police action is required after the BBC admitted to paying a family with ties to Hamas. We're making a controversial documentary about Gaza. And for a full update on this astonishing story, I'm now joined by our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark White, the BBC in a right old pickle. Tell us more.
Yeah, this documentary, Gaza, How to Survive a War, featured a 14-year-old boy called Abdullah as the narrator of that documentary. It turns out that this boy is the son of a senior Hamas minister, and that now the BBC, through this production company, paid the boy's family a sum of money. Now, given his very close links, the father, that is, with the Hamas regime, the concern is that that money may well have filtered its way through to this terrorist organisation. So the Metropolitan Police have confirmed that they may well open an investigation. They say that in their statement, they say that the Met has been made aware of a BBC documentary about Gaza, and we've received a number of reports raising concerns. Officers from the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command are currently assessing whether any police action is required in relation to this matter. Now, the reason that the police might investigate is because Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation in this country, and to pay any money that might go to them would be a criminal offence.
Mark White, thank you very much. An astonishing story. Thanks for bringing us up to date. Now, we've got another astonishing update here, and this time from the White House, because Donald Trump has warned Volodymyr Zelenskyy, "You're gambling with World War III," and says he should be thankful. Astonishing breaking news there, live from the White House. Now, up next, I'm discussing France's approach to tackling the Channel crisis, such as it is. Finally, it seems the French are springing into action. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, at long last, the French government is set to finally lift the ban on stopping migrant boats at sea for the first time in a long overdue effort to reduce illegal channel crossings. Let's speak now to the former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force, Kevin Saunders. Kevin, finally, the French are going to spring into action. Finally, they're going to stop people leaving the beaches on their side side of the channel, finally, they can actually get in their own boats and do something about it. We've been spending £500 million a year for them so far just to watch people going. What took them so long?
Good afternoon, Martin. Yes, this is exceedingly good news. Although let's not get too carried away, because they're going to stop the boats up to a limit of 300 metres from the coastline. So what they're going to do, because they were floating the boats round from the canals and the rivers, now that these have been blocked, they can't get them round that way and the people on them. So they're going to the people smugglers are inflating the bigger boats that they're going to use quite away from the beaches, and then getting them up to the beaches, but not landing on the beaches. They're staying in the sea because they know that the French won't do anything on the water.
And Kevin, it's simply astonishing to think that, as you say, a recent tactic has been to go down the canals that flow into the sea, where the gendarmes can't see them, too busy smoking gitan on the beach, and they steam past them. And now they're actually going to be launching. Look at these police. They couldn't run for a bus. And they're expected to stop these dinghies leaving. Look, they're simply watching on as these dinghies are getting full to the brim with illegal immigrants. The French, up until now, haven't even got their shoes wet.
Well, now, of course, they're going to use their ribs, which are fast and very good in shallow waters, to intercept these boats before they go and stop them leaving. I suspect they will probably slash the boats so that they can't sail away, and then the people will have to go back to land. But they're not only doing that; they look as though they're going to introduce a law which makes people illegal in France, which they can then serve on people who might have been going to drive the boats and what have you, and create a criminal offence so that they can be arrested. So it looks, as long last, as though the French are actually rolling their sleeves up. Or should I say rolling their trousers up?
Well, they've rolled their trousers but actually going for a little paddle at long last. I mean, why did it take them so long, Kev? And more to the point, here's something else for you. Is it time to go a step further? You know, when you were running Border Force there, why do we see so many British vessels going practically right to the French coast to do pickups? RNLI, Border Force vessels, effectively been a taxi service back to Britain. Is it time to knock that on the head as well?
Well, that would be nice, but you'll never stop the lifeboat people doing that, because their argument is that if people are in danger, then they have to pick them up. It's their remit. So but
the point is, though, Kev, they've been going deep into French sovereign waters, practically on the French coast. If it's inside British waters, that's different. They're doing the job of the French Coast Guard, is my point.
Yes, well, they are, but perhaps they won't have to do that now. If the French are really getting themselves in gear, then they won't have to. But this is because the French government are having to do this because the French National Rally, Le Pen's party, are getting really strong in Department 62, which is North part of Calais. And the French government are worried that they're going to win. They're going to win that department. So they're having to act because they don't want National Rally getting in power there.
It's an astonishing state of affairs that paying £500 million a year hasn't made the French act. You know, puffing up our chests and telling them to stop le bateau, as Daubney might say, that hasn't worked. It's taken an insurgent French political movement for them to finally get their backsides in gear. It's astonishing. Anyway, we should never look at a small victory in the face. But here's a point for you, Kevin Saunders. They're French. Will they actually do it?
Oh, I think they probably will, yes. I think they probably will. I mean, my understanding is politically they're very worried. So that's, I think, what's going to drive them. It's not It's not us being nice to them or anything like that. It's them really worried that they're going to get themselves in a bit of a pickle if they don't do something. So that's why they're going to do it.
Well, there we go. It took a French political movement to make sense of the British border. You couldn't make it up. Kevin Saunders, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. Now, we've got some breaking news shots for you now, just in, of Donald Trump meeting with Zelenskyy in the White House. There we go. So almost exactly the same as we saw yesterday with the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. Now it's the turn of Volodymyr Zelenskyy there in the same pair of chairs in the Oval Room there inside the White House. And the US President has warned Zelenskyy he is gambling with World War III. And he said he should be thankful to the United States of America. And we see Zelenskyy there looking, well, rather sheepish, I think. He's looking rather crestfallen. Donald Trump seems to be completely in control of this conversation, as you'd expect. But in terms of body language there, would you agree? Zelenskyy looks rather crestfallen. And he's also told the Ukrainian president his comments were very, very disrespectful. That, of course, alludes to those previous comments. And you can see there, I think, the body language is oozing. Donald Trump running the show and Volodymyr Zelenskyy looking like, well, frankly, he'd rather be anywhere else on the planet. There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including more immigration madness. I'll reveal just how many non-European Union nationals were able to blag their way into Britain via the European settlement scheme. You couldn't make it up. That's next. But first, here's your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good evening to you. It's 33 minutes past 5. Our top stories. Donald Trump says a deal giving the US access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals will be signed today. He is holding talks right now with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Now, the US president and his Ukrainian counterpart have been taking questions from reporters in the Oval Office. Trump says a ceasefire in the war with Russia is fairly close, but Ukraine will have to make concessions to reach a peace deal with Russia. Well, Zelenskyy says there should be no compromises with Vladimir Putin. Trump's response? You're gambling with World War III. Zelenskyy, the third European leader to visit the White House this week, after Sir Keir Starmer yesterday and Emmanuel Macron, the French president, on Monday. And just a week ago, Zelenskyy said Trump was living in a disinformation space created by Russia. And the US president called Zelenskyy a dictator. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says it's disappointing to lose a good colleague over the foreign aid budget, but the decision to increase defence spending is right. The Minister for Overseas Development, Annalise Dodds, has resigned over Sir Keir Starmer's decision to slash the international aid budget. The money will instead be used to boost defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. In a resignation letter, Ms Dodds says the cuts would remove food and healthcare from desperate people, deeply harming the UK's reputation. GBNews has won its judicial review of the TV regulator Ofcom's decisions that two shows hosted by Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg breached the broadcasting code. In a landmark ruling, the High Court found Ofcom's conclusions that the broadcasts in May and June of 2023 breached the code's due impartiality and content regulations were unlawful. As a result, the court quashed the decisions and has awarded GBNews its legal costs. It is the first time the watchdog has lost a judicial review of one of its own decisions in relation to the broadcasting code. And a spokesperson for Ofcom has said this: we accept the court's guidance on this important aspect of due impartiality in broadcast news and the clarity set out in the judgment. We will now review and consult on proposed changes to the broadcasting code to restrict politicians from presenting news in any type of programme to ensure it's clear for all broadcasters. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has called for an urgent meeting with the chairman of the BBC after concerns were raised over a documentary aired by the broadcaster. The BBC's apologised for serious flaws in the making of Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone. Counter-terror police are looking into whether the law has been broken by the payment for the involvement of a Hamas official's son. The BBC says it has no plans to broadcast the film again in its current form or return it to the iPlayer. Finally, Greek police have fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators throwing petrol bombs as mass protests to mark the second anniversary of the country's worst rail disaster have been marred by violence. Dozens of hooded protesters clashed with security forces earlier. They were attempting to storm the barricades in front of Parliament in central Athens. Hundreds of thousands of people have been taking part in countrywide demonstrations. They're demanding justice for the crash that left 57 dead and dozens more injured. It's a bit calmer now in the Greek capital. However, an inquiry has concluded that the collision of a passenger train filled with students and a freight train was caused by human error, poor maintenance and inadequate staffing, and that safety gaps that caused the crash have not been filled. That's it for the moment. More at 6 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. On the M6 in Cumbria, the motorway is blocked southbound from junction 36 to 34, just south of Kirkby Lonsdale, at the scene of a serious accident. In Greater Manchester, on the M62 eastbound, the two outside lanes are closed at junction 19 at Hayward following a collision. And on the M1 in Nottinghamshire, well, the inside lane's closed off southbound from junction 26 to 25 towards the A52 Nottingham Derby exit. A lorry has broken down. The M11 in Essex is partly blocked northbound 889 north of Stansted. There's been a crash involving two cars. In Kent, the A233, the Westram Hill at Westram, that's still closed for accident investigation work. And on the trains, well, buses replace East Coast mainline services northbound from Kirkcaldy to Aberdeen after a train caught fire. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tom Pickup, host of the Really 007 podcast. Hello, Tom. Thank you very much for joining. I've just been singing Live and Let Die to myself for some random reason. So what's going on here, then? Is Bond going to be changed forever? I mean, Barbara Broccoli was pretty hands-on and tough with what happened to that.
Yeah, you've got to think that this goes back to 1962 when it all started with Sean Connery and Dr. No. Her father, Cubby Broccoli, got the film rights and began the franchise and the movie character we all know as James Bond. So it's a big change. It was always going to come to an end eventually. Barbara took over pretty much when her father died, before GoldenEye, when Pierce Brosnan was the new Bond. But she's really had all the control with her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, who's the other producer on Eon, since then, since 95, really. And they didn't cast Pierce Brosnan themselves. That was Cubby's casting. Their real casting was Daniel Craig. And I think now that that chapter has come to an end, and whether you liked it or not, it had a very definite ending, maybe that's been part of the reason where they think they'd rather spend their time in retirement doing something else. It's time to pass it on. And they've got a ready-made partner already in Amazon.
Is it going to get a little bit woke, though, Tom?
I've no idea, but all I know is that Jeff Bezos obviously is head of Amazon. He's already put a tweet up or on X saying, "Who do you want as the new James Bond?"
Oh, okay.
So he's already including the fans, which I suppose is a good thing. Whether or not we'll have a say, we don't know. But I think what it'll be is what people want, what people on the outside see as James Bond, not necessarily super fans like me.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 20 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, on this wonderful Friday afternoon here on GB News. Now, more immigration madness next, because a GB News exclusive now, an astonishing 800,000 non-EU nationals from an incredible 176 countries were able to blag their way into Britain via the European Union settlement scheme. Now, that's a city, the equivalent, the size of Leeds, that's been able to get into Britain, and I just cannot get my head around this story. Here's the man who's going to explain and give me a lesson. It's the chairman of Facts for EU, Lee Evans, great fan and friend of the show. Lee, explain to me in simple terms, how in the name of sweet baby Jesus can 800,000 people who aren't from the European Union get into Britain using a scheme for European Union residents?
That's a very good question. I have to say, they haven't all got settled status yet. This is the number of applications. The problem that we have in this major set of 4 reports, Martin, is the quality of the Home Office data, and you're a great one for deep diving into data, and that's what we've been doing for the last few weeks. So this particular report is quite extraordinary. It's part of our look at how the population has jumped over the last 20 years by 8.2 million. So we delved into this, and we looked at the EU settlement scheme as part of it, and it's extraordinary numbers. In this particular report, what we're identifying is the sheer number of people that have been able to apply using the EU scheme, but they come from all over the world. And 27 countries in the EU, 176 countries represented in all these applications. You just kind of wonder how many of those genuinely have any kind of family relation to an EU citizen.
Okay, Lee Evans, just to momentarily interject, because that man, Donald Trump, is upon us again. Let's go now to the White House. We've got some images, we've got some pictures here from the White House. Let's listen in.
You'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal? That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014 and 2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good, very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
allowed.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
allowed.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over there. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
I can tell you
You're
again,
running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
That was with Obama. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry, here.
It'll be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden, because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia, the 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right. We'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thank you. Guys, let's go. Guys, come on, let's go. We'll see. I don't know. All right, guys. Guys, come on. Please. Hey, come on. Guys, come on. Let's move, please. Thank you. Thank you.
What an astonishing confrontation there. Absolutely astonishing confrontation in that Oval Office inside the White House. This was expected to be a tense meeting, the carving up of Ukraine's mineral assets, 50-50 split we were rumoured was going to be the outcome. Instead, it ended in a full-blown blazing row between Donald Trump, the president of USA, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, with J.D. Vance, the vice president, wading in. An incredible outburst. Let's go over a few of the highlights of that astonishing outburst. Donald Trump said, "You have been forcing conscripts to the front line. Don't tell us how we're going to feel. You're in no position to dictate terms." Volodymyr Zelenskyy sat there looking literally like he'd rather be anywhere else on the planet than getting a dressing down in front of the world's media inside the Oval Office in the White House. He sat there absolutely simmering with fury. Donald Trump went on, "You don't have the cards right now. You're gambling with World War III." You could hear the oxygen sucked out of the room when that comment landed. Donald Trump then went on to say, "This is very disrespectful to this country." And then J.D. Vance came in and said, "Have you said thank you once?" He then pointed out, "You've campaigned for the Democrats in this country. You campaigned for the opposition, and now you're here with Donald Trump. Your country is not winning this," he said. And then Volodymyr Zelenskyy hit back at J.D. Vance, said, you haven't been to our country once. And then hit back saying, "Listen, we gave you $350 billion worth of equipment." This is Donald J. Trump saying this. He said, "It's going to be a very, very hard to do business like this. You have to be thankful. We want to stop the bullets flying. What do you want? I'm going to tell you now, it's going to be very, very a tough deal to do business with people like you." And then he said, this will make great television. This will make great television, I'll tell you that. And then the press conference abruptly ended. The camera people walked out of the room, stunned silence. The most incredible press conference I think you'll see in recent political history. Where do they go from here? Is anything salvageable? Wow, what a way to end the week. Thank you for your company. Jubes & Co. is up next. I'll be back 3 till 6 on Monday. Have a fantastic weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Well, there are long delays on the M6 this evening, heading south out of Cumbria towards Lancashire. The motorway is blocked from junction 36 at Kirkby Lonsdale to 34 at Lancaster on that long stretch of the motorway at the scene of a serious accident. On the M62 in Greater Manchester, the two outside lanes are blocked eastbound at 19, the Hayward exit at the scene of an accident. Worth bearing that in mind if you're heading towards Rochdale, of course. And on the M1 in Leicestershire, the two right lanes are also closed southbound junction 22 to 21 towards Leicester. There's been a collision causing queues back onto the M69 naturally. The M11 is partly blocked heading northbound through Essex, just north of Stansted, at the scene of an accident involving two cars. Down in Kent, the A233, the Westram Hill, closed at Westram. Accident investigation work's been ongoing since 11 o'clock this morning. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to be one of two big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have two prize bundles that have to be won. There's two lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Good evening, it's 6 p.m. You're watching GB News. I'm Miriam Kate, and we have just been hearing the most extraordinary press conference over in America in the Oval Office between President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Zelenskyy. It was an extraordinarily heated conversation, which Donald Trump quipped would make very good TV. Well, here's a clip to see now.
I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on. I understand, sir. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you a shit sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry, here.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden